Today I don't have a lot of presentation. Mostly we learn together, we exercise together, but I have some slides a bit as a conclusion of or remembering the presentations of the first day, what we have talked about, and then after that going to our discussion on today's agenda. And if I go to the first slide, this is the agenda for today. You have seen already this. I would start with the recap from the first day, and also you see the agenda for today. My presentation will be about somehow the importance of. First is first part also is about the again why resilience in short, why we talked about resilience, what is strong, its resilience is strong capacities or own capabilities to be involved in disaster risk reduction and management, but somehow what is lacking with resilience and why resilience is criticized, and what is, I would say, limitation, conceptual limitation of resilience, not only in the practice, but also in the conceptual way, how resilience is criticized in the mostly academic and political agendas or discourses. Then I would proceed with what we are going to do and how urban planning or urban governance and planning is expected to contribute to resilience and also get some benefit from resilience. It is a reciprocal relationship. It can contribute, and at the same time, we embed or translate resilience concept to the urban planning processes or practice, then we definitely, our cities can get benefit from this interaction. Also, we had one general question or mission it was about developing a measurement framework for assessing the resilience. I will explain a bit more. We had 5 guiding questions, decided to have only 2 or working on only 2 questions, but nobody knows. Maybe we have time to talk about more of them. I think we can, not in much detail also, but to understand what is the question and how it can, this kind of question, step by step, guide us to do our work or our mission in appropriate way. Then I think we will have in 2 groups, definitely you will have maybe some own works in separate group on tasks. I will also join in your group to have discussion, bilateral discussion, maybe in different ways, different ideas. Totally is open-ended questions and discussion. Maybe just we talk together, we share our knowledge, our experience, and understand what is ongoing. To be honest, what is, I would say, an advantage for today's discussion is like, it is an ongoing topic. I didn't work this one. I didn't work on the, for example, a measurement framework for framework for analyzing resilience of urban planning. I didn't work. And to be honest, based of my knowledge, because in our project also we are looking to do that, and there is no framework for that one. This is one advantage, that it is an innovative discussion today we will have, hopefully, but maybe disadvantage is it's something is not grounded in the theory, and we just rely on brainstorming. I see that as an advantage mostly, because this is an innovative discussion. But I think I presented some general and well-known frameworks on resilience, but mostly they are in broad urban systems or community systems, talking about a lot of systems in urban areas, in communities, like social aspects, infrastructure aspects, economic aspects, and etc. But focusing on urban resilience, urban governance and planning system is a bit new one. literature, we see some kind of they highlighting the importance of urban governance and planning to support resilience. On the other hand, how resilience can help, can support the capacities of urban governance urban governance and planning to support our cities in time of disasters, climate change, other chronic stresses. We had two kind of stresses or disasters, sudden ones like earthquake, flood, and slow onset. Those that are a bit in long, they are occur in long term, in long time, and their effects can be seen in, for example, not short time, a bit long time, like we had an example of, for example, migration, climate change impact, and etc. And yeah, after your presentation, again, we discussed together and maybe other more questions and answers. And this is the plan that we will have for today. And also what we had, just a short, I think I'm sure that you have the presentation. I don't go to the detail, but what we discussed, it was about the resilience background, how resilience came into the agenda of disaster risk reduction management, some existing framework on the umbrella of disaster resilience measurement. Also, we talked about the composite indicator as the breaking down approach and how it can be used to quantify resilience, to operationalize resilience also. And we presented two case studies from natural hazard and also in Iran, in Tehran city, and also from the other type of socioeconomic stressors in the context of 106 German large cities or big cities. And yeah, I would start again shortly to remember you also asked why we talked about resilience. We had three kind of aspects or factors that contributed to having resilience more on agenda. These three items are most mentioned factors or highlighted factors that we see in the literature talking about these are reasons, these are backgrounds for having resilience, not only on the academic parts, gray literature, also on the policy agenda. The first one that we mentioned was that risk and vulnerability induced by natural hazards and also man-made hazards are globally rising. I think I had some other slides, but this is also, I would say, a lot of work, a lot of projects have been done on this area from the different kind of groups in United Nations level, in country level. This is one latest and very informative one. This is from the European Commission's and EU project, very, I would say, strong and sound theoretical background about analyzing risk in global scale. And this is a dashboard from this project. And if you go, you can see different kind of elements for risks and in different countries. If you, for example, go to Iran level, if you click on Iran, if you click on your own country, doesn't matter, Germany, other country, you see the score and you see the comparison and in comparative way, the status, the score of your own country, but it's a national level, you know, not also we have also, I have seen also in the provinces or states level. What is the status quo? What is the score for analyzing the risks in each country, and how risk is defined and is also based on the very well known definition of risk, disaster risk. They use three categories: hazards and exposure. We had also, this is from the UNISDR, United Nations standard terminologies on disaster risk and resilience. And as you may remember, we heard about that three, the definition is based on three categories, and now it's four, but here is the level of hazards and exposure, vulnerability index, and lack of coping capacity. And by combination of this is the inform framework, and very, as I mentioned, it's a good framework, and it is from 2021. It is online format. I just took a snapshot and brought here. This is again why we have talked about risk and resilience. This is a very ongoing topic, because mostly risks and vulnerabilities are globally rising. The second reason and factors we talked that resilience is supported, why it is now mostly supported by policy and academic arenas, is like that the allocation of large and high profile finding. It is also the case after the Hurricane Sandy in 2012. A lot of money, especially US, allocated to analyzing or doing proactive studies, and this is one reason that, and after that, not only due to Sandy, but it was, somehow we have and we experience some kind of strong event. Let's say, for example, what happened on New York terrorism attack in 2021, and after that, I don't think up until that time we had a lot of discussion on resilience against terrorism or something like that. After that, we had a lot of discussion on that. Also, I heard after it was in 2014, one terrorism attack occurred in Marseille, if I'm not mistaken, and I saw some kind of good papers and also projects talking about the role of urban design to tackle terrorism attack, to deal with, against of that like that. This is why we see resilience at the core of international policy discourses on disaster risk reduction. I mentioned that the Weather in Sendai framework in 2015, it was the first post-2015 international agendas on sustainable disaster risk reduction, sustainability, and etc. Also in SDGs and UN Habitat, New Urban Agenda, UN Habitat 3, number 3, we had resilience, we see resilience. I had some slides on how and in which priorities, in which goals they are highlighting the term resilience. Also, I mentioned local to global stakeholders pressures for engagement in the resilience. Stakeholders means who's from different kind of actors, individual, institutions, etc., bring monies to here resilience or contribute to resilience in different way. And I also had 3 kind of very well-known active stakeholders on the topic of resilience in the global scale, including the 100 Resilient City, ICLEI, and also the UNICEF making Resilient Cities campaign. And the third one was about the own potential of the term resilience, the own capability of the term resilience. Why resilience? And we heard about that in the literature. Mostly 3 factors are mentioned about the strength of resilience to be applied in disaster risk reduction management. We heard that that scholars arguing that resilience, the concept, the term resilience, underlines, acknowledges adaptation and transformation concept in the planning. Adaptation and transformation mostly applied in contrast with coping and coping capacities, and mostly transformation part focuses on transition. The term transformation also, transformation from one state to another state. It means that the term resilience focuses mostly on dynamic, not reactive actions, mostly on proactive strategies and proactive ones, and acknowledge learning process, what we have learned and how we can transfer, how we can apply our learnings, our knowledge to our future, the pathways for the different kind of patterns in different fields. Here we talk about resilience and mostly resilience planning. Also, we heard about that the resilience emphasizes the importance of system thinking. And why? Because we talk about cities, system of systems, if I'm not mistaken, system of systems. A lot of systems we see and are in cities that produce their processes produce this kind of activities, different kind of system like transportation, housing, etc. These are a function of different kind of systems in cities and in urban communities. And finally, we heard that resilience can be applied as a way of integrating different kind of discourses, interests, dialogues, and creates a common ground for planning and action. This is also another discussion. Also, it was mentioned, this is a very late, the third one is a very latest argument about resilience. And if you see, most of the references that are here is more after 2015. And this is the new parts of resilience, the new way that resilience is being pushed forward in planning and disaster risk management. And it was one most important criticism of resilience, that resilience is exclusive and should be inclusive. I would say this is one of the latest aspects or capacities of the term resilience in the literature. Applying as a way of integrating different kind of dialogues, discourses, agendas, interests, and etc. in the planning and action. After talking about the three reasons that why resilience is in disaster risk reduction and how it can be applied, we come to this slide. We talked about that how resilience, we heard that resilience now is applied in three formats, in three capacity formats. And we talked about that resilience means mostly building capacities. But which capacities? We talked about three different. We also see, for example, in some high-level literature, also you can see more capacities. I also mean, I think I had one that also included predictive, anticipatory, and something like that. But it depends to some literature. This is also the synthesized version you see here. Resilience, the term resilience in three different kind of capacities. The first is absorptive coping capacities, adaptive capacities, and transformative capacities. You see the level of resilience from how it is changed from low to high when the capacity, the type of capacity also changed from the absorptive coping capacity to transformative one. Also, it means also that the intensity of change, also transaction cost, differs when you mostly focus on absorptive coping capacity is low, or you focus, or your target is focusing or analyzing or interventioning on, transformative capacity. Then the intensity of change, also the costs are huge and high. And this is a very short description of how resilience also, it is also very important. We should know, and my answer for most of the questions were in this direction. You know, I wrote the questions, and I remember most of answers like that. It depends how you see resilience. It depends how you define resilience. It depends to the way that you use or you accept or you adopt one narrative of resilience. And we discussed and we heard about three main narratives of resilience in urban and regional scales. We discussed about that robustness. One narrative mostly is applied and it's focused on engineering resilience, and the argument is like that we need this kind of capacity, robustness, and inherent coping capacity. We need this because our communities, our cities are increasingly experience a lot of natural or climate-induced disasters, and our communities are threatened by this kind of disaster. We need to invest in our infrastructures. We need to have redundancy. We need to think and make our, for example, infrastructure, our system more in terms of recoverable, make them recoverable. The second narrative was about urban ecological resilience, and the focus was the reason to have this one was like that the urbanization patterns, pathways, and urbanization strategies that now we see in the most of developing and also in some developed countries are unsustainable. And we need to make our systems more ecological way, and we need some kind of related capacities, adaptation, biodiversity, and etc. The third one was like making resilience in transformative way and building long-term resilience through governmental and institutional capacities. And it is from social resilience school, and the reason, the problem they highlight is like that our systems, our planning, our government or governance system should be adapted to new condition. What is the new conditions we are talking about? Is that we see increasing complexities and uncertainties in world dynamics. We see different kind of this is very, I think, very normal. Unfortunately, we hear every year, every month, every day, new kind of threats. Yesterday, unfortunately, we heard about the new variation of COVID-19 virus. We see now some kind of threats that we didn't already experience. This is some kind of not innovative, but new one to experience, to tackle, to learn with. This is why transformative resilience matters, and this is why this kind of capacities are mostly acknowledged and highlighted. Our systems, governance and planning system, mostly planning system, because planning, we know what does it mean. It means we should think about more in how to organize our future activities, our future settlements, our future, I don't say infrastructures, our future environments, and etc. And I had also one graph about some examples I had today. Maybe if in discussion we can come back to this table and understand what kind of examples also we can use for framing our framework. What kind of examples? You know, we heard in the resilience measurement that resilience is an abstract concept, and it is not easy to measure, unmeasurable concept, and we use indicators as a proxies for measuring resilience and quantifying resilience. It is important because it is in other fields also. We need some kind of indicators to measure, and it depends on how we develop measures. We learn about that. We need theoretical background, theoretical foundation, theoretical framework, let's say. And without having a sound theoretical framework, it is not easy to go and develop indicators, because these are some important topics that should be also considered in resilience framing and also measuring. We use theoretical foundations, theoretical framework as a primary, primary would say necessary steps toward measuring and quantifying resilience. But after talking a lot of things that we talked about, and I remembered what we discussed, but we didn't talk on the first day is why. What is the challenge of resilience, the term resilience, not only in the, mostly in the theoretical way. This is the, you know, when we say this is the theoretical limitation of a concept, somehow it is not true, because without applying that, without operationalizing it, it is not easy to understand what is the limitation. Because now after I would say after 5 decades from the first formalization of resilience, the term resilience, we heard about that. It was first, the consensus is like that the first formalization of resilience was on ecology in 1973, about 50 years ago. And after that, a lot of disciplines in resilience entered and was applied in different kind of disciplines, from engineering, from psychology, from geography, urban planning, disaster risk reduction, management, and etc. And we learn about, and our knowledge in 2021 is like that we can judge and we can say what is our background, what is our strengths and our weaknesses about the application, about the formalization, about the operationalization of resilience. What I'm saying here, I have I think 5 items. Challenge of resilience is not only on the definition of resilience, also it is about application of resilience in total, because we learn that resilience is from theory to practice, from the conception, definition, indicators, weighting, to visualization and validation with resilience. How we understand resilience in academy, in policy, in practice for policymakers, and etc. We talk about here the one big picture, but including different kind of elements, would say aspects. And the first one is multi-level institutional coordination. We heard about, and I think I discussed about what does it mean, because when we talk about the resilience on urban scale, our focus in urban areas, we have different kind of actors, stakeholders, and I think also different kind of interests and different kind of attitudes we can see and track in the time that we plan for having resilience planning, or making a strategy for resilience from different kind of sectors. From, for example, let's say talking about Tehran, when we would like to make a resilient strategy, resilient strategies for next 20 years in Tehran, and if we bring, because we agree that it is a multidimensional, multi-perspective term, from different kind of aspect, economy, governance, social, and etc. And we discussed that the resilience should be inclusive. This is true. And here we go in democratic way, and we include different kind of actors, stakeholders, organization, and from different structures and etc. And it is one problem in the literature that have been mentioned: coordination between different kind of institutions with different kind of frameworks, because the framework, for example, for Ministry of Housing and Road is different with, for example, Ministry of, let's say, environmental planning, or Ministry of Finance, or Ministry of other ministries, other organizations. The frameworks, the legal basis, the interests also, not only the framework, because different kind of aspects are included in this attitudes. Having an attitude on resilience is not only having private and personal attitudes. Also, I'm an employee in Ministry of Road. One attitude is my personal attitudes. Maybe I'm not urban planner, I'm urban planner different. I'm an engineer, I am psychologist, I'm etc. This is one from, steps by step, having different attitudes on resilience based on different kind of elements, from personal attitudes, from the, experience, from the legal limitations, from the ministry interests. These are factors that may affect the interests or the attitudes of the Ministry of Road on having resilient strategies for Tehran in next 20 years. Then coordination of this kind of, and most of time in developing and undeveloped countries, conflicting interests. Maybe one is resilient for this ministry at the same time, it is not a resilient interest for other ministry. We have seen, and mostly I would say, this kind of problem challenge was reported in the also gray literature. The second is inclusion of key actors and forces. It is also clear that different kind of actors from different levels, I mean, individual, organization, government aspect, government, organization, ministries, let's say other NGOs, there are important actors that should be considered when we are planning for resilience framing, resilience analyzing, resilience monitoring, evaluation, etc. Therefore, inclusion, and this is very important aspect, inclusion and inclusive resilience also we see also in the agenda in sustainable development goals number 11, the goal number 11, it is mentioned having planning for making our communities and cities that make them sustainable, resilient, fair, and inclusive. These are somehow related concepts, but they because they didn't use this kind of terms suddenly and by chance. I think this is by having a target to do that in this way and having them in one goal and in relation to each other, making cities sustainable, resilient, fair, and inclusive. Therefore, here, most of gray literature reported that without more inclusive way of resilience planning, measuring, etc., the outcome is not trustable, the outcome is not fair, the outcome cannot be sustainable, and etc. And also, this is also this kind of challenges are so somehow related to each other, and these like in chains, they are they support each other and they are related. Horizontal interaction between sectors and actors. Also, I think you can imagine how this kind of horizontal and somehow top-down processes may affect the coordination, cooperation, and how resilience is made or established, and other challenges reported in the relevant literature. Marginalization of low capacity and vulnerable groups. This is, I think, I would say, mostly I have seen personally this in the literature. Marginalization of low capacity and vulnerable groups. It means that most of time planning for resilience in one region, it depends on scale. One region, one neighborhood, one city. It doesn't mean that it increases the resilience of all. Maybe resilience for one neighborhood in Tehran increases the vulnerability of other neighborhoods, or provides adaptive pathways for next years, for next stage. And somehow, I think I gave an example of how marginalization occurs, and somehow by, let's say like that. This also, I think Dr. Asadi mentioned about having this building code. It could be an adaptive pathways towards resilience, an adaptive, It's not coping capacity, because most of the time we have thresholds and we have normal coding. For example, in planning, if I back again this table, sorry, here in the first one, we say, I hope you see enough, because I have to back to this display is very visible, tangible for me. Example, you see the examples of absorptive coping capacity. And these examples are mostly from urban governance and planning, my interest and my focus, urban governance and planning. And here mentioned traditional modes of governance, process, and planning systems. What does it mean? It's very clear, traditional. In Iran, for example, in Tehran, as as far as I know, I think some friends are from the Ministry of Housing. If I'm mistaken, please inform me. Um, what is the process of planning, urban governance and planning is top-down, centralized version. It's not bottom-up or decentralized. I think most of decisions are made in a central way and without hearing the voice of all relevant actors. I don't mean all relevant actors having or hearing the 12 or 10 millions of people living in Tehran. It's not possible. But some methodology we have seen in the literature, we can focus and work on that. Maybe NGOs and in Iran in different kind of system can work for this one. Therefore, and model planning system. One example is planning is in Iran and Tehran is regulative. It's not strategic, or it is not conformative. Excuse me, it is conformative, not performative. And conformative is like that. We have a master plan, for example, master plan also, and based on master plan, we have urban detail plans, and all, for example, building density, population density, let's say transportation, having residential areas, also open spaces are based on these two plans, relevant plans. The high level is master and then detailed plan. And we think about and we make some kind of regulations for Tehran. We say this is detailed plan and this is from master plan, high work, and this is and it is not voluntary, it is obligatory. And if you go to and live in Tehran, if you are planning to live in Tehran and doing some building activities in construction, etc., you should follow. You are obligated to follow these guidelines. And this building codes maybe is the one adaptive, and in the second one, I'm coming to here, and here we have some kind of, for example, embedding short to medium term risk level to planning, like this building code 2800, if I'm not mistaken, to 2800, if I'm not mistaken. This is adaptive one to existing planning models, but sometimes this is very good one, very good, because we say Tehran is located on. Thank you, and Dr. Sagi, for correcting me. This is true one that I mentioned. And this is very good one. We say that Tehran is prone to earthquake hazards. We have to follow this building codes to make our building construction more strong that can tolerate earthquake. This is true. But somehow the details, who decides on that matters. Maybe some kind of, I don't say Tehran, it's mostly maybe other countries, mafias, who decides based on other background, other interests, and it is not inclusive. Maybe I personally can follow this one, but maybe Dr. Sabi couldn't or can't. This is the way. And if someone cannot follow this one, if this policy is not in inclusive way, transparent, is not fair, it means it can be a maladaptive pathways towards resilience. It can increase my resilience while decreases Dr. Eshagi's resilience, or put her in the vulnerability group. These are reported, believe me, these are reported in the existing practice of resilience, and it is one important challenge or criticism on resilience, the present one, at least up until 2018, marginalization of low capacity and vulnerable groups. If we are planning for making urban planning resilient in Tehran, we should think about that. How many people, how many families, with kind of salaries, income, live in which areas? To what extent they live in northern areas? Because Tehran is the city in the world, I think the only city, in my point of view, is like that. We in the economy, we have the global north and global south. The only city that can be a very an empirical evidence. Dr. Salmani asked me empirical evidence. This is one empirical evidence of global south and global north in the city, in one city example. Think about the north of Tehran, the south of Tehran. If we have a adaptive strategy for planning in Tehran, do we go to consider Tehran as the whole picture? Also, the southern parts of city with their social conditions, economic condition. Only no, we see Tehran as, for example, Velinzach or etc. These are very also new, not new, but important topics in resilience. When talking about resilience, should not be in the way that marginalized low capacity and vulnerable groups. And finally, this is also these two people, Kofi and the next one, are very well known in mostly in adaptation policies in the global way. In IPCC also they are active, and political dimension in planning and implementation. What does it mean? And we agree, and we see that also we heard about that resilience has own capacities from the policy perspective, from the concept, its concept, and also how it can attract stakeholders in the global and local areas to bring monies for planning, for action, and etc. But also we have heard in the literature that if resilience, this kind of activities, policies, strategies are not enough connected to governance or government. Here I would say government and government forces. The transition from the ground practice is not successful. If we have very inclusive resilience, we have very good coordination, but we forgot to think about how we make this translation from the theory to practice. Who should support this? Here, mostly the function of leadership, and leadership, maybe not leadership, but the focus is that we should think on the policy parts of also resilience. And mostly, it was also a great question for me, what does it mean? Because if it is like including someone from policy, we have ministry, for example, wrote from the policy, from the government, but it is not like in that way, only institution. Also the processes, the regulations that support this strategy, resilience strategies to be implemented. This is the way, and mostly it was in this direction. This criticized the fifth one is like that. We prepare good strategies, inclusive, fair, transformative, etc. But we didn't think about, or we don't consider how we should go for, and we bridge the gap between theory and practice. There are a lot of criticism on resilience. I just have here 5 main items. Definitely, there are other important factors that should be considered, but as I said, 5 items I think are enough. And how it was mentioned, addressed, and at least how I see, and I focused on that in our group also, because we are planning organization department, my organization, and also it is my interest also. And also, again, interesting, I have mentioned that resilience is mostly not in the literature, a lot of literature we see, and I think also you know about literature. And we also talked about the agendas. The importance of agendas are very acknowledgeable, you know. I highlight again, and I repeat agendas, policy agendas. These are because important, and if you see most of governments follow this kind of, because these are first inclusive, most of countries, and somehow governments are only sign this one, this kind of policies. I know that Iran, for example, has signed the Sender framework. I'm not sure about the UN Habitat or SDGs, but I am sure that the country, the government, the central government has signed this one, the first one, UN Sender framework. And also, these 3, at least the Sender framework, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, UN SDGs, and UN Habitat New Urban Agendas. These 3 agendas are also highlighting the importance of planning and governance, urban planning. And mostly the new urban plan, in the new urban agenda in 2016, several times in the five main priorities or guidelines encourage the new form of planning, and also not only new form of planning, that the focus is making more resilient and something like that. Also, the importance of how resilience also can contribute to resilience, how planning can contribute to resilience by its own capacities. I mentioned, for example, the criticism on resilience, how it can be translated. And I would give some examples. And one very inherent, I say inherent antecedent or inherent capacities of urban planning and governance is like that. In cities, most of activities, most of land uses, most of the most important things are the realization of this system, governance and planning system, where we see streets, our main basic infrastructures and critical infrastructures, basic services, open spaces, residential areas, where cities should go, or where the next developments are established, mostly are based on, as far as I know, from master plan. These are from the planning system. In Tehran, I had a slide that how the population, I didn't have here, sorry. Tehran, most of you know about Tehran and how it was developed in last 40 years or 4 decades, and how mostly it was also because the first master plan was prepared on, if I'm not mistaken, this 1960s. I don't remember, 66 or 65, something, or 68, the first one. Maybe Dr. Sagi again helps me. And these are based on this most of development. And if now we think about making the city more resilient, again, which system can help resilience is again urban planning and governance. Because when we talk about cities, most of these factors, aspects also related to this system. We heard about social things. Social means, for example, education, I don't know, salary, internet, etc. These can be supported by governance, or infrastructure, housing, let's say, environmental planning, air pollution, etc. Also, we talk about the planning, urban planning, and one tools is land use planning, regulation, zoning, and etc. This is one idea. I'm still working on that. The contribution of urban planning to resilience, and you see in this graph, you see resilient-oriented urban planning, combination of urban planning, not only the planning, the realization also as a process. Who is active, is informative in processes, actors, different kind of actors, from government, from NGOs and stakeholders, etc. And the process of these norms, these structures, these functions generate different kind of strategies, policies, and etc. And how they can translate it to the underground realization is by practice. For example, housing format, for example, urban density, buildings, in transportations, I mean streets, and etc. And if we link resilience, if we support resilience by urban planning, it means that we adopt, here you see in this loop, in this, if I hope you see my mouse, we can get or adopt government instruments to what? To, again, as I mentioned, to support this translation to the practice, to the ground level. And if we, in the second loop I'm talking, if we link resilience to inclusive attitude, we can support, or we can compensate the limitations of the concept, because we heard that resilience may not be all the time fair. or inclusive and transparent, participatory, or fair-based. And if we make resilience, and if we complement resilience by inclusiveness, but the term inclusion, it makes resilience like that we co-provide here, the second, co-create positive visions for our cities. At the end, by doing that also, as I mentioned, we can link the great theory, great framework to the ground level transition. If we, for example, if we embed the resilient guidelines, something resilient capacities, examples, let's say strategies to details plans, طرح تفصیلی, or master plans, we can see that to what extent the theory can be translated to practice in a good way or easy way, because everyone, each city in our planning system should follow these guidelines. One idea is like that. This is one idea to support resilience, also cover its limitation, and another, again, highlighting, translating, and because in my point of view, this kind of hot topics, good topics, interesting topics, attractive topics like sustainability, resilience, adaptation, transformation should be operationalized. If they can't, I think it's again only can be located on this, and we just see and maybe use in the papers and etc. And this kind of the nexus between policy science and practice cannot be imagined. Therefore, this is why I also highlighted, I created this question, this group work exercise, why focusing on resilience of urban planning and governance. And also, it is very, very popular in the, again, in agendas on the literature, that it is not only that resilience contribute to urban planning. Also, this is reciprocal. If we can translate this concept to our planning in the turn back, resilient urban planning can create long-term resilience pathways. And the next one, how, if we think about this, is an submitted paper under revision to Cities Journal, and this is again a joint paper we developed with Iranian partners, also German and Iranian partners. A lot of people are in here, at least 10 people, I think, to capacitating urban governance and planning to drive transition. I talked about transition toward long-term resilience. Long-term means here transformative resilience. And we had, because it is also part of INCREASE project I mentioned in the first day, even in German joint project. And one idea is, okay, we acknowledge the capacities of resilience by defining, by contextualizing it, because what does it mean here, contextualization? The first step, we agree that if we focus on making or evaluating resilience in every system, let's say here urban governance, we should build the context for resilience. I think in the next step I have it. I don't talk about on that. The process of capacitating. Here we have the topic is capacitating urban governance and planning systems to drive transition toward long-term resilience. How? In the easy way, how urban planning and governance system can be resilient, but which kind of resilience? We talk about transformative resilience, and here you see we synthesized 4 main domains of urban planning and governance. This is also maybe one starting point for our discussion today, how urban planning can be resilient, but transformative resilience. We also, you heard about that, the planning system should be participatory and inclusive. It means democratization of decision making. I already mentioned the way that resilience is being defined, established, measured, operationalized, etc. also is like as matters as the outcome itself, I mean that we talk about resilience, its importance, but we should not forget how we go to define who decides on that. Who decides on that? Here, I mentioned this is also, I gave an example, participatory and transparency. Transparency. The decision making should be, also in resilience planning, should be transparent and include as much as relevant actors possible. And means democratization, we name at least, democratization of decision-making process and advocating inclusion of multiple actors in planning processes. But to what extent it can be, to be honest, we use this very general criteria. It was also like the composite indicator that I mentioned already to you, how we can measure resilience. By doing so, also we analyze 2 metropolitan regions. I don't have here, but in short, because it's a part of revised paper under revision, 2 metropolitan region, Tehran metropolitan region and Rhine-Ruhr metropolitan region in Germany. The Bonn is also here. For those, I think, German people know, Rhine-Ruhr metropolitan is including the cities in the a bit west and south north part of the North Rhine-Westphalia state in Germany. And we selected these 2 metropolitan because of different interesting, again, we didn't use contextual resilience in terms of natural hazards. We used this resilience against urbanization and migration background, because both metropolitan regions have experienced a lot of migration activities. In our paper, we mentioned, I think most of the Iranian colleagues know about that. Most of the population growth of bombation of Tehran is the result of migrating from the other regions or cities to Tehran in last at least 50 years ago, and in some area, decades more, some less, but migration is huge. It has a huge role in the population growth of Tehran metropolitan region, mostly. Example again, Chad, I think that one. In 40 years ago, it has only, I think, 15,000, and now more than 2 million. And the second items, or the second dimension that we highlighted to make urban governance and planning was flexibility and decentralization. Flexibility and decentralization mean button up, not only top down processes, structures, or let's say norms. We say reorganization of governance or reinstitutionalization or reorganization of governance structure to capacitate self-organization. We should think about that everything cannot be ordered or issues from the central office, central ministry, or central, etc. And we should focus on learning and fit to context, creativity. Innovation also is the next one. Innovation, novelty is also the function. They are related one. This is this loop saying that each items are related and supported, and these are very interrelevant dimensions supporting each other. The next is we need innovation novelties. Means reorientation of planning context. And one items I already mentioned, one very important aspect of transformative resilience, like that this attitude, transformative capacities, call for challenging or criticizing what we had already. I also gave example that why transformative capacities are recently encouraged in the relevant literature, because transformative resilience calls for challenging the established processes, the established organization, the established materials, etc. Without challenging why we are here, because why we are here is the function of what we had, not only in the personal attitudes, also attitudes, infrastructures, processes, norms, regulations, zoning, etc. It means that we need innovation novelties in planning processes and practices, and means that we should think about to change our fundamental change in our values. If we focus on transformative resilience, maybe values is now different with focusing on absorptive copying capacities. For example, if the one value in absorptive capacity was only making or strengthening the infrastructure, physical strengthening, investing in the stability of tunnels, bridges, but if the values now is transformative, also thinking about the accessibility of the vulnerable groups to these infrastructures, the fairness of this affordability of this infrastructure and system. These are values and attitudes, also priorities. Priorities is the priority that should support whose, and resilience for whom. Also here the question, resilience for whom? Resilience for all people, for vulnerable people, resilience for rich one. These are questions also, and also here that highlight that new urban planning and governance should think on innovation and novelties. And finally is orchestration. Orchestration means balancing and leadership. I think also we heard about that. We need some kind of harmonization of fragmented interest and integration of decision-making processes across scales and sectors. Harmonization of different, it is very interesting. Here I would go give some insight from these two different contexts. Why different contexts? Different because the system again was governance and planning system. And when we talk about the North Rhine-Westphalia and Rhine-Ruhr metropolitan, we have different kind of governance. At least is a bottom up here. It's not top down like Tehran. Here somehow decisions are made in a separate one, in decentralized way, most of time, and much more than Tehran, the case of Tehran metropolitan region. But again, when we try to score, but our scores a bit was not inclusive. Again, the 10 partners did do. It is again challenging, one limitation. The best way was to distribute the question to more actors in both metropolitans. The plan for the next time, but at least in 10 partners, not so less. We have seen that also in the North Rhine-Westphalia, this is challenging. Cooperation is existing here, but coordination is also challenging, and also reporting the relevant recent, which is not very old, not from 2018, 19. It's reported, and we had in our also our score was like on poor, fair, good, and also this one was also poor in the one of the developed countries in Germany. I mean, very challenging topic, orchestration and leadership in the resilience planning and organization. And how we can go, so is a topic for today maybe, how we can go, okay. Time, I had a look on time. Excuse me, 1 minute, just. This kind of planning, understanding resilience needs, in my point of view, should follow this kind of 4 steps. First is contextualization. We need to have a starting point. We need to build a context for our intention. Here we think about building, making our planning system and governance more resilient. Therefore, we need to make a context and identify needs and gaps. What is wrong with current urban planning? This was also in our questions. To resilience to what, and what is the challenges, current challenge of urban planning? If our system for building resilience, urban planning and governance, we should to understand what kind of challenges or stresses this system, here urban planning and governance, can have on time of, if the context is disaster risk, on earthquake, maybe in Germany on time of migration. Therefore, contextualization is important to understand what system, resilience of what, to what, is about resilience against earthquake, against flooding, against climate change, against economic crisis, or etc. And what is the function of the system? Not in the normal way before, but what kind of challenges, for example, economic crisis, migration, let's say earthquake can pose to urban planning and governance. Then conceptualization, the second one is imagining urban governance and planning, because the system is imagining urban governance and planning capacities to explain and evaluate resilience. This is our focus, and this was also the main focus of most of the frameworks also that I presented. Also, you have seen the 3 examples at least, or 2 more relevant about urban resilience. Is what kind of capacities the system can have to support resilience, and as a starting point for evaluation of resilience. Imagining urban governance and planning capacities to explain and evaluate resilience. And maybe I have another examples to talk about. Then next is operationalization. After having a conceptual framework, we should analyze where we are. If we are talking about the resilience of urban planning and governance, if we develop some conceptual framework, then the next step we can operationalize, measure, quantify our background, our theoretical foundation here. And this is mostly done, we talked, by should be in ideal way by combination of quantitative and qualitative index or approaches. And the next is generalization. I would say this is our focus here, because we don't go to develop, for example, get data and making multivariate assessment or generalization, etc. And we somehow did contextualization. We talked about making resilience of what urban planning and governance to what is about, for example, natural hazard, earthquake and flooding in Tehran. If we think about how we can make urban governance and planning in Tehran more resilient against earthquake or flooding, this is the first step. We have already shortly talked. Here we need a bit to talk about more. What kind of capacities can contribute to resilience of urban systems and planning in time of an adverse event like earthquake? And this is, I think, somehow relevant that some kind of questions that I distributed with you and to you in the previous slides about the 5 what's in resilience. What, again, sorry, forgive me, I have to come to here. First is who. Who determines what is desirable for an urban system? These are, again, in theory, in practice, in literature, and even in the project place, we discuss about resilience, or in the ideal way. Also in our project, we have talked about that. What should be in the urban system be resilient? What networks and sectors? When the third one is the focus on short one, maybe coping, short term, medium term, long term. Again, short term can be coping capacity, medium is incremental adaptation, and long term is transformative. Where again is on the urban system, on urban governance planning, on infrastructure or system focus, and why is also why we focus on that to make it excuse me, it is relevant again to absorptive or long term. We want to make resilience of urban governance and planning for short term, for next 5 years, for next 10 years, or next 20 years, or we focus on making infrastructure more resilient to what? To make them more stronger when an earthquake occurs, or making them more adaptable for future activities, maybe not only earthquake, also more urbanization, maybe also for against land subsidence in Tehran, or maybe landslide, flooding, etc. These are very important questions when talking about the evaluating resilience. And one other things also about here, this is a conceptual schematic for urban system. This is urban system. I already talked that we focus on one system. Here you see, this is from Miro 2016, a conceptual schematic for urban system. You see here governance network. Here they named or they identify four actors here. States from different scales, from different for different target NGOs, industry and labor. One study. Then network, the material and energy flows. Excuse me, and vast energy, materials, food, water, and again consumer goods also, etc. Here, urban infrastructure, the systems inside of one different kind of system inside of urban system, and just having again starting point, having an imagination of what kind of systems included in urban system. And the next and the other is infrastructure and form of cities, buildings, utilities, transportation, ecological, green spaces, and etc. Open spaces means, and also socio-economic dynamics like demographics, mobility, equality, education, capital, and public health. These are some guiding principles or systems that it is necessary when we are talking about the previous questions. For example, which system, resilience to what? Which system, by using what? This kind of what can be also applied here, and should be, this is the system that should be analyzed when talking about or establishing resilience framework. And you know about this one too. I think 3 papers you had. This is the one in 2013, De Souza and Flannery, yeah. They developed conceptual framework. I know you have studied this one, maybe if you had time. But again, like I can't bring another slide here, but I think you remember 5 guiding principles that we had at the beginning also. I see in here, maybe you see also the other, if you have 2 displays, monitors. The system, context, and scope, resilience of what? Their focus is urban. The first element in the paper was the urban element of urban system. They have, I think you saw already, you studied maybe. The system focus was urban system, like the previous that by Sarah Miro. Urbans, they decided on urban systems and elements that are in urban system. Then they wanted to understand what kind of stressors or challenges this system can or may have in time of an adverse event. They decided on 5, I don't see here well, natural, economic, technological, and human challenges or stresses, and the impact was like maybe makes the system destruction, decline, or disruption. These are the impacts that this kind of economics can pose to system in time of an adverse event. They had the idea of what can enhance or decrease resilience level. They came to the some enhancers and suppressors you see here, and finally they decided the driving factors of making urban system resilience, and they came up with 3 elements: planning, designing, and managing. One example. In their opinion, these are the driving factors and what kind of quality they provide. Designing, and they argued in like this way, very short. I wanted to, and this is very famous and international, but they also are very famous, and this is very easy. In my point of view, they have the resilience of what you see here. They focus on systems or processes. Resilience, for again, in the context, here you see social group, region, institution, etc. System. Resilience of what? Maybe systems, infrastructures, maybe cities, urban planning, governance, communities, and etc. Different kind of system, And they to what? Again, to what? Maybe it's a shock, earthquake, has flood, maybe hurricane, or maybe stresses like climate change, maybe sea level rise, maybe migration effects, etc. This is the capacity to deal with disturbance. They are talking about this, what kind of capacity the system can enhance or decrease the resilience of system. They didn't decide on, but is guiding how kind of capacities can contribute the resilience of system to each of them. These disturbances depends on the decision or interest. And again, reaction like the previous one, the impacts, if the system can provide good capacities, or if the coping, adaptive or transformative capacities work, what happens? Return back better. It was a goal from Sendai framework also. And if that didn't work, if cannot, if the capacities cannot absorb the impact of hazards or stresses, what happens? These are very schematic presentation of conceptual framework in very general way. You know, this is also our intention here. Not too detailed, but if we can, or we are interested, we can do some maybe more. For example, name of, I think I have another example. This is for a conceptual framework number 3, resilience for peace framework. And you see, again, I don't see much quality here, and you see the conflict, the stresses is here in conflict, not disaster risk reduction, earthquake, not flooding, is a conflict, maybe civil war and something like that. And they this circles and different ways are scales, maybe in different scales in individual, household, community, and etc. goes to large scales. And also they talk about which kind of capacity, maybe absorptive, adaptive, coping capacity, and in which way the transformation, positive manifestation of resilience can occur, in positive way or in negative way. And in this side, right side, they talk about the inherent function of system, because they are talking about, if, for example, community that can contribute to resilience. They talk about the endogenous resilience. Endogenous means also inherent, what is already there, what the system already have, by having regulation, by having institutions, by having financial sources, and etc. Actions they talk about, they talk about structures also. We can talk about on urban planning also, because in urban planning, we talk about structures, institutions, organization, their actions, what they do, their processes also is very relevant, and relationships, network, how they are related to each other, norms maybe. And they came up to some 6 driving factors that can contribute to the peace resilience of a city. And they say social cohesion, leadership, governance, and politics, safety and justice, information and communication, economic resources, and legacy of the past. This is, I would say, these driving factors are used as a dimension. Then for each of these, they can, or every study or project can develop, identify relevant indicators. This is the way, like, after having that, you know, this is very important. After having, this is a part of conceptual framework. After identifying driving factors for resilience in different format, different contexts, that in this way they this is the resources this is a joint project they did in the inclusive way. They have an agreement on that. For example, think about that 20 or 30 or I don't know how many actors decided on that. This is the foundation for them. Then the second step on composite indicator can occur. They can go to, for each of these dimensions, select some indicator. They can gather data. They can think about, if this is the process based, they can go to second primary data. If it's quantitative, they can go to secondary data, and they can proceed to what? To have a starting point. To understand after another what contributes to peace resilience, and what kind of interactions are needed more. What kind of interaction, where they are good or where they are not good. This is the very, I think, easy format of understanding this conceptual framework, and I separated that, and I think I don't have other slides, and I would come back to you and talking a bit on we have I think 30 minutes to first break, and Philip, come here and help me how we can go further. I planned for 45 minutes talking on the slides, but now more than 90 minutes. Okay, how we can proceed now, and any idea?
I think we just continue with the group works or not.
Yes.
How about that? What do you think?
And two groups we have there, and you have different groups also. You can, if I ask, you can kindly transfer and me to each group, yes? And each group knows what about their question, yes?
I think we need to adjust the groups a little bit.
Okay, now.
Not all the people are here from
Yes, I think so.
our last session.
We can call them, maybe by chance, or the first one in first group, as I see, or not.
Dr. Asadzadeh. Dr.
Yeah.
Asadzadeh.
Hi,
Hello.
Dr. Samani. Nice to hear you again.
You are in the weekend in Germany, and we are in the first day of the week.
It's okay.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Your presentation actually and your topic was so interesting for me that I prefer to postpone my class and attend in your class.
Thank you very much.
We have a short chat with Miss Haji Mohammadi because both of us are in the same group, and actually I'm afraid because in one side I'm not familiar with resilience and the topic adaptability. I just hear about them, but there are a lot of things that I don't know. But
yes.
Actually, I have that may be a paradox. I have a questions. I think it may be a very simple for you, but we know that the resilience is very flexible, or it is dynamic. It is based on a dynamic equilibrium. But I have a question. That, and there is, that we have one level, we can name it actual. Sorry, I say واقعی, or the present status. And the other level we can define, of course, imagine. The other level is the potential of the system to reach in that. So we have a current status, current situations, the present time. For example, the present time, imagine we are talking about a city like Karaj, for example, or an ecosystem, about a watershed or a dam, anything else. So at the present time that we are talking about with these situations, it has, for example, a value or a value, a special value on resilience. That I'm talking about the current situation, the system. But this system maybe can be enhanced or reinforce and increase the resilience. For example, imagine for Karaj city, we want to increase the resilience about the earthquake. For example, the current situations and the future perspectives. So, but the question is, how much? Is there any ceiling value? I know, what is the top value of the resilience? How we can determine? In the other words, I want to know, maybe a system cannot be increased, the resilience. Imagine the system at the moment is at the top level of resilience, so it is not possible to increase its resilience. So it means that we can do nothing. Maybe the system at the present is at the top of level of resilience. So how we can understand to find out the top level of resilience? I don't know, can I express my goal or not? Anyway, we can talk more. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Nasiri. Dr. Salmani, Nazari Salmani, I'm sorry, so sorry. Thank you very much for the great question. This is also very relevant question. A lot of times I had, for example, when I was drafting my PhD also, again, I heard from my students, you are definitely not students, but also ongoing questions, and much appreciated for the questions. And I think this is a good starting point rather than directly going to the group works. We have time after also a break. We have time. I think this kind of question is also very, in my point of view, very helpful. I would appreciate, and I would go to my answers. I hope my answers meet your satisfaction, hopefully. Very good classification you had, actual and potential, واقعی and غیر واقعی. And if I say in Persian, this is also true in literature. Maybe I mention different name with different terminology, but again, I would use this your category. It's very true. When I was talking about resilience, also indicators for resilience, Dr. Samani, we talked about the characteristic, and I had one slide. I don't know, can open, but latest, if we have time, I can open it. We talked about the resilience for what purposes. If we go to analyze, if you say resilience, actual resilience means that focusing on those dimensions, criteria, factors that are objectives, true, objective was actual, in my understanding. It means that this kind of factors are already there, are inherent based. If they are actual, it means they are visible, or they are objective, not subjective. In resilience terminology, in resilience, let's say, areas, literature, we call this kind of capacities, because we say resilience as a capacity, but different capacities. This kind of capacities are called resilience attributes or characteristics. And in the literature, these are mostly addressed. Why? Because as you mentioned, they are objective or actual and can be easily measured, because they are there. For example, you had the example for carrots. We talk about, we would go to measure resilience of carrots against earthquake. If we talk about what is the presence or actual level of resilience in carrots, we have two discussions. The first is, if we call actual, then we know which kind of capacities we would go to invest these characteristics. It means we go to analyze coping capacities, coping at absorptive capacities. If we go to analyze earthquake resilience of carrots against earthquake, we have to analyze their, building capacities, infrastructures. I presented 4 dimensions here, maybe social activity aspects, economic aspects, more importantly, and more in objective or actual category is housing and infrastructures. Is very important for resilience. What we don't measure much, at least we didn't in my PhD. And what also, for example, Susan Cutter from UNS and South California, she claims after 40 years great work on the resilience, she claims that has not been much in the literature, is like capacity and what you say potential resilience, capacity-based resilience, performance-based resilience is not easy to analyze. These are subjective capacity. Then we can talk about objective capacities, subjective capacities. Objective is characteristics, attributes that can call, for example, the building qualities of the number of, for example, tunnels, bridges, schools, I don't know, open spaces, because open spaces are very important when an earthquake occurs, and we can use for recovery, for example, resistance. These are terminology and keywords for resilience. But somehow, potential capacity-based resilience, these are a bit new one in resilience agendas fields. The second is these are not objective, they are mostly subjective ones. These are performance of systems, individuals toward a goal. What is the goal here? Goal is here maybe, for example, coordination. I think it's not easy to analyze, to measure coordination between, for example, actors when talking about the earthquake capacity in Tehran, in Shiraz, and when we would like to measure the actual, the present resilience. And also, for example, we talked about the 4 items of transformative resilience: leadership, or innovative methodologies, innovative planning processes. And it's not number. For example, we can say, for example, number of innovative strategies. What does innovative means? Because we know what does it mean. Number of high quality buildings. We have criteria for that. 3 criteria we already discussed about that. This is the first category. We can talk about on actual and potential. In resilience, we say baseline indicators. Baseline indicator is a quantitative one, and capacity-based, qualitative indicators. The first, my answer, I would say. The second, you mentioned about the, socio-economic, about the inherent resilience, part of the first one. This is true. This kind of inherent socio-economic capacities are, again, if they are part of actual resilience, if they are part of characteristics, attributes, objective, then we can include. If these are from capacity-based, we have to categorize them. We can, but we should consider the methodology that we should go to analyze them. The methodology also to weighting of them, because if we talk about the measuring coordination or innovation or leadership or democratization or let's say transparency, these are criteria that we should definitely think about that, but we cannot make it quantitative and actual data. Actual also, again, for me, is like data that are available that can be achieved also by census or secondary data. But the second question, Dr. Salmani, about the level of resilience, if the system's resilience are high, what is the next? This is a bit challenging question, because mostly when we talk about resilience in the literature, mostly is a bit comparative one. This is why, because the term also is an abstract term, and it is not, for example, we don't know what is the exact number, it's not, we don't have a threshold for resilience. We don't know what is the, for example, if we talk about, for example, building quality for resilience, actual capacity, characteristics, attributes, and by second data we can measure. But we don't know, for example, if 90% is resilience, 100, we know 100 is better. If we go one case study, we say, okay, it's not easy. Okay, we say, we went to Karaj and analyzed that 100%, 50% is with high quality building. But we need to, again, compare this category with the same case studies first, and if we are just only focused on one case study with other attributes, what is the relation of this with, for example, community capacity, what with economic, with environmental, with infrastructure, with social? These are comparative analysis in the literature. For example, if you see that IROP index pioneered by Rockefeller Foundation, they did, for example, a lot of cities worldwide, they do like that. If they come to Tehran and analyze, they compare in which category the city is better than others. It's not like that we say, okay, Tehran is good enough in resilience. It's not totally, it's not, we don't have such, for example, whole judgment for resilience. And we should talk about, because we go in this way, we say resilience for us, for example, for DAAD model is defined in 6 dimensions. Therefore, we need to go in this way. Okay, resilience is big picture, but we go to make practice operationalism through 6 dimensions, and we should compare in this way. We analyze and we realize that, okay, carrots in this one is better than others. This is why I mentioned understanding resilience is good to understand what we are, where we are, and what we and where we go, and why we go, and where should to go. These are some arguments, but to best of my knowledge, is not like that. For example, we can say a maximum level of resilience is existing. Mostly comparative, and comparative is like, because the term is also an abstract term. It's not like that we say for one people every day 100, 400, 4,000 calories is enough. But for resilience, I don't know. I didn't say, for example, this kind of threshold is enough. Mostly, also, this also applies for the second category, for potential category. Again, if we go with scorecards, because those indicators that are potential, capacity-based, performance-based, they are measured by resilience scorecards. And I mentioned already, scorecards are qualitative by primary data. Again, is a comparative. For example, we have 10 dimensions for resilience performance, for potential resilience, and we compare. For example, we say, okay, coordination, flexibility, decentralization, leadership, orchestration. We ask 2,100 actors, and again, we get their vision, and again, we can compare the Tehran's condition, the Karat's condition, based on 2 different kind of dimensions. I would say, based off my knowledge, I have not seen, for example, like that. If the case is like that, we don't have one big picture for resilience. Again, because this is the way we go, because the theoretical foundation we talked about, we should translate this theory to practice. How we do, we use indicators as a praxis for resilience. We say resilience is a blah, 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 and with this blah, blah, we define in dimensions, maybe social, economic, environmental, blah, and inside of each dimension, a lot of indicators. If the analysis scale is 1 city, we compare these different dimensions together, economic to institutional to community capital, infrastructure, etc., to understand where we are, which is good, which is not, and what kind of interaction in the next 10 years, 5 years. If Tehran is good in institutional level, for example, and is less in physical or infrastructure, therefore, in the time of mostly limited financial sources, we should prioritize our investments. We understand, okay, we analyze Tehran, we are good in institutional. It doesn't matter in actual or present, because we use indicators by different methodology. We understand that the next 5 years maybe is good to go to infrastructure, maybe. These are at least the pathways when going to analyzing resilience. And to be honest, this is my answer, at least. I hope meets your answer, but maybe later we can talk, maybe if we have time, in Persian also, somehow, to maybe avoid misunderstanding. And yeah, next question, maybe Philip. I think we are close to break, maybe, but we open for other questions, maybe, and after break, we can go to group works. What do you think?
Sounds good. Yes, of course.
Thank you to Dr. Nazari. Very good question, to be honest. Other questions? Much appreciated. Questions. I like questions. Philip, maybe you have question.
Not yet. Maybe later.
Oh, not yet. It means you have. And,
excuse me, Dr. Asadzadeh, I have a question.
Please go ahead,
or
Dr.
maybe
Asad.
that's Yeah, something that is not clear for me. So I see that we have three different type that resilience that start with the absorption. So this is not really clear for me. Is this three different from absorption and then adaptive and then transformative? Is it possible? I mean, it should start from absorption. I mean, this is necessary, or no, we choose which one we want because it starts from the first category that you said, the type of the capacity that you showed in your slide, and we have it here. So absorptive coping capacity. So it means the system, for example, if we are in zero phase and we want to start make or city, I don't know, neighborhood, whatever, make it more resilient. So if we start from the zero phase, we should start from absorptive and then we continue to add the adaptive capacity and after that the transformative, or it's not necessary. You just jump to the transformative. You know, I don't get what is the step that we should start from. Is it step by step from this type of capacity to the next and to the latest one, which is one the transformative, or no, we can choose which one we want, and basically it's recommended, if I understand correctly, that we should go to the third one, the newest one, transformative capacity. I appreciate if you make it clear what is the step here. Is it mandatory? Is it by choice?
Yeah.
How we decide which capacity is the best for a zero phase step, for a
Yeah,
city
thank you
that
very much. Yeah.
didn't start any step. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very good question. Exactly, very, very good question, because it is again could be potential question. Which one is best one? And I think it is not your question. Your question is which where the city, where the system should start to understand. I think it is your question. And again, it depends to the target or the why resilience. We had in the I think in the first presentation, the first day you will find it, and that if again it depends to the interest of the group or the organization person who is going to focus on resilience. And what is the focus? What is the interest? If the focus is to understand the so-called analyzing characteristics of cities, and if the focus, the target is to understand to what extent the system can absorb the event, the adverse event, for example, earthquake, and tolerate the earthquake effects and back to the previous state. These are, I am talking about again the theories of resilience, what is what we have in the literature. Therefore, the zero step is here going on absorptive coping capacity. You are, for example, an engineer. You are talking about the resilience of critical infrastructures in time of earthquake, an earthquake hazard in Tehran. Therefore, the zero step is like to understand to what extent earthquake can is that the existing infrastructure can tolerate, and you see here in the second row the keywords for each one. The keywords for its absorb, prevent, cope, maintain, persist, return to equilibrium, bounce back, and minimize, and etc. These are keywords, and mostly denote to the first. This keyword denote to this the first category, absorptive coping capacity. Again, but somehow the focus, for example, my focus in the example paper was like from the beginning, we decided to focus on the transformative one and to understand what was the role of existing planning norms, infrastructure, planning, regulation to transformative resilience. And we mentioned at the beginning, we argued that our intention is on transformative capacity. We can, definitely. It was our interest, and nobody can say at least I have not seen from the reviewer why you didn't talk about absorptive capacity. We talk about absorptive capacity. What does it mean? What is the example of it? But we mentioned that the target in this study is like that. But if I would, in the project based answer, in diplomatic answer, if I would say, I think it is better to also to have 3 of them. Depends on the capacity, personal capacity, financial capacity, time capacity, and etc. Having 3 of and studying 3 of them. For example, what does again the system example is what as we assume that example is urban governance and planning, and we go to understand the resilience of urban governance and planning system. The best and ideal case is to make separate 3 kind of capacities. Because definitely, again, step by step, we can talk about the existing theoretical foundation. We can talk about what kind of dimensions or indicators can be applied for analyzing absorptive coping capacity. And it can contribute to understand where we have been. Because these absorptive coping capacities I mentioned already. Mostly, we argue that they are inherent. It means in our system, planning and governance system, we have them. For example, here we see traditional mode of governance planning. Definitely, we have a planning. Definitely, we know in most of, even in undeveloped countries, we have some kind of regulation planning, even in very weak points. But definitely, we have. And examples are here. If we understand, if we analyze these absorptive coping capacities, then it can help to understand to what extent these kind of capacities contributed to adaptive capacities, to long-term capacities, or contribute to vulnerability or maladaptive capacities. Let's say in literature we also say maladaptive means that adaptation didn't work well, and we can categorize. Also, we go to the second one. For example, we talk about we had a discussion on the building code 2800. We can discuss and the effect of analyzing the effects of this building code on Tehran. And again, we can, other also capacities we can talk about on analyze in this case, I mean, but in times of, and this third one is about the transformative long term, to what extent, which kind of indicators we can use. And again, different kind of target is like here, you see in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the 5th row is about the what is the target and type of resilience. Here, target in the transformative innovation, enhance our present and future well-being. The future well-being, the long-term future well-being is only can be adapted, assessed by transformative capacities. And for example, here, what you see is long-term strategies, long-term, we also have in this kind of statement in planning, strategic planning, not only regulative planning, because regulative is absorptive coping capacity, but strategic phase after that. Also in urban planning discourses we have like that. We had from master plans, Patrick Geodesy, then we had, for example, a strategic planning in 1970s, 80s, and after that, now we have sustainable urban planning and something like that, step by step. We can link that, but I would say in short that in ideal case, all of this I had been in our planning and for project also we would go to in 3 of them to understand which kind of capacities exist for its different capacities in terms of urban governance and planning. But what is the best? And at the end, what is the can be mostly policy and practice recommendation? I would say is the transformative capacity, because it's the future-based one, because it is based on what we learn, and also we appreciate that resilience in the third potential of it was learning, self-organizing. This can help us because we doesn't matter after ending the project, you go to some recommendations that are based on absorptive coping capacity, and we have it. For example, let's say we say at the, doing after 4-year project for Tehran, increased project, we say it is good to have a master plan. Master plan is already existing. You know, we have it, but we have to say at the end what kind of master plan or master plans for next 20 years, and that should be transformative and should challenge the existing one, because the existing one is unsustainable, make us vulnerable. We see the practice, the evidence. Therefore, in the ideal case, 3 of them, but at the beginning, if it's a writing paper, it's academic one, depends on interest, and our thesis paper on the revision was transformative capacity, Dr. Sabi. And yeah, we have, I think now it is time to go for break. Thank you to Dr. Saib for the question. And Philip, if you agree also, we can have a 1 hour, 56 minutes break and seeing each other again in 2 p.m.
Yes, sounds good, of course.
Thank you very much, all participants, all for your all tolerance and attentions, and hope to see you soon in 2 p.m. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Now, definitely it's good afternoon. Welcome back to the workshop, the rest of workshop, and I'm just counting how many we are now. We are 5 as participants, and I was just chatting with Philip as from the organizer team. We may have a bit different format now for proceeding from now. The first is maybe rather than 2 groups, we can proceed only with 1 group and making like an opening the questions and answers. I think this is the best way, because we are only 5 with me, definitely, and it is most of people went out, and this is the, I think, only option we have. And the second, I would apologize who don't speak Persian, and now I would ask in this section, I would ask Iranian, please accept my apologies. It's not to say that you don't speak English, your English is not enough, something like that. I just wanted to, as encouraging you more to engage in the discussion. And if Dr. Eshagi also accept the format, I would ask some Iranian to engage and share your knowledge by Persian, and I would translate maybe to Catherine and maybe for others that are not familiar with Persian language. I got the acceptance from the NaDiMa team, Philip, and I would go with this one. Catherine, I hope you accept the idea, yeah?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine with me.
I will translate based on my knowledge, but I will translate because this is also to make cultural interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm interested in the insight from the Persian speaking people.
Thank you for your understanding.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Then at least I see in the list, dear Marzieh, dear Nasser, and dear Zahra would first go to start. If you have some question, you are free to talk in Persian, okay? And this is one of the main target of this, I think this project, NaDiMa, is not in language. Language is the mean to communicate. You are free now to talk in Persian, to give your feedback in Persian, ask your question, and then also in the continuous for more planning, because the important for us is to having the same, not same, but to have to having a background, to having a starting point for discussion, and therefore I would ask you to go further with, if you are okay with Persian. If you would with English, definitely welcome, but if you would also with Persian, you are welcome. Who would start first? بفرمایید.
Hello, Dr. Asadzadeh.
Hello.
Want to start with which question? we want to
At the moment, dear Marzi, if you have any feedback, if you noted anything up until now that you wanted to ask in Persian language, اگه سوالی چیزی تا الان دارید که نیاز پاسخ داره به توضیح بیشتر داره میتونید بپرسید. الان فارسی صحبت کنید.
نه، سوال من همین بود که با آقای دیتا نظری مطرح کردن که آیا سقفی برای رزیلینس وجود داره که ما تا چه حد می‌خوایم به اون تاباوری برسیم که خوشبختانه خود تا حد زیادی شما جواب دادید. مثلا این حد اکثری براش وجود نداره.
نه اصلا نداره. واقعیتش تا جایی که ما تو لیتریچر هم داریم اصلا مقایسه‌ایه، چون واقعیتش عرض کردم ما براش سرانی نداریم که مثلا بگیم مثلا میگم مقدار مالا مثلا میگیم برای گیاه روزانه مثلا 2 لیتر آب و رزیلینس چون چیزی نداریم. بعدم چون یه دونه نیست، مثلا میگیم تاباوری فقط یه فرمت نیست. بگیم ما تاباوری رفتیم تهران خیلی هم خوب، چون تاباوری رو ما میشکافیم، یعنی همین چیزایی که صحبت کردیم تاباوری رو ما میشکافیم. میگیم تاباوری اون تعریفی که داره توانستن، خواستن، ساختن، مقاومت و فلان با چی میاریم؟ میگیم اکونومیک باشه، سوشال باشه، اینستیتوشنال باشه، کامیتی کپیتال باشه. همین رو لحاظ میکنیم. اگه کیس مقایسه‌ایمون مثلا تهران به زنجان، اصفهان، تبریز اینا نبود، دیتا نداشتیم، پاسیبیلیتی نداشتیم، اون موقع مثلا میگیم خب تهران رو مقایسه میکنیم، ولی خب ما تاباوری تقسیم کردیم، ما تاباوری رو تعریف کردیم که مثلا 10 تا دایمنشن داشته باشه، مثال میزنم 20 تا ایندیکیتور داشته باشه. اون موقع میایم این نسبت به اینا میسنجیم. ولی خودش در یک کلمه بگیم تاباوری تهران عالی فلان چیزی نداریم. تاباوری تهران در کلیت میتونیم با تاباوری تبریز مقایسه کنیم، با اصفهان مقایسه کنیم، بگیم ما تاباوری رو 6 تا بود دیدیم، حالا اومدیم تبریز رو دیدیم، تهران رو دیدیم، اصفهان رو دیدیم، برلین رو دیدیم، مثال میزنم. این نسبت به همین جوریه. ولی در یک کیس مجبوریم بشکافیم میشه بدون در کجا خوبه کجا نیست. بعد
یه سوال دیگه هم داشتم.
بفرمایید.
در مورد والنربیلیتی، آسیب پذیری و اینکه حالا چجوری شما اینو محاسبه میکنین یا تو مطالعاتتون در نظر میگیرین، میشه یکم بیشتر توضیح بدید؟ من اینو
حتما
یه مقدار با مفاهیم دیگه قاطی میکنم.
حتما. ببینید والنربیلیتی مفهومی است که خب اونم حوزه مرتبط استفاده میشه. بعد مسئله‌ای که هست والنربیلیتی توضیح دادم در لیتریچر آسیب پذیریه. آسیب پذیری اینجوری حساب میشه، میگن یه مفهوم داینامیکی نیست، استاتیکه، چون توش کپاسیتی دیده نمیشه، نداشتن کپاسیتی دیده میشه. مفاهیمش یه جورایی، حالا گفتم 3 تا رویکرد توش هست. بعضیا میگن این دوتا به هم خیلی مرتبطن، یعنی یه جاهایی حتی اوورلپ دارن با هم، که منم اینو معتقدم. مثال اینجوری میتونم بزنم که مثلا شما میگی تاباوری اسدزاده، اگه باز تاباوری بشوی میگیم خب مثلا فیزیکی، ذهنی، دانشی، زبانی، مثال میزنم، شنوایی، دیداری، گفتاری، فلان و فلان. اینجوریه. خب اینجوری میشکافیمش. ولی در مورد حالا من شاید تو مثلا فیزیکی تاباور باشم ولی تو شنیداری والنربل باشم. اینا یعنی جاهای اینجوری نیست که من بگم تاباورم یعنی هیچ آسیب پذیری نداشته باشم. این نگاه کلی رده. این اونیه که میگه دوتاشون با هم مشترکن. بعضی‌ها میگن که نه، اصلا این یه حوزه دیگه داره. جیوگرافرها اینو بیشتر میگن تاباوری یه حوزه دیگه‌ای داره. این اونجاییست که میگن اصلا ضدن، یعنی اون همون که گفتم، میگه من اگه تاباورم پس آسیب پذیر نیستم. نگاه کلی‌گرا داره. اینم تا حدودی هر کسی از زن خود شد یار منه. ما خیلی متفاوت داریم، گفتمان‌های متفاوت داریم. ولی اگه بخوام به سوال شما که آسیب پذیری رو آیا میشه، چطور میشه میجر کرد، اندازی کرد، این همین اون 8 استپی داشتیم برای کامپوزیت ایندیکیتور، شاخص مرکب من اسمشو میذارم. شما باید برید از دل لیتریچر بگید والنربیلیتی خیلی فریم ورک داریم مثل رزیلینس. یه فریم ورک رو برمی‌داری به عنوان چارچوب نظریتون. و تا جایی که میتونه اگه کار آکادمیک مخصوصا باید بگید که خب تابعیش فلانی این تعریف کرده، فلانی این تعریف، شما اداپتش میکنید. مثلا تهران میگم، مثلا میگید تهران آسیب پذیریشو میخوام چیز کنم، مثل اون اندیکیتورها شاخصاشو چیز میکنید، دیتا رو میارید و بعد میرید انالیز انجام میدید. ولی در آخر که بخواید اینو با ریزیلینس تاباوری مقایسه کنید آسیب پذیر، بازم باید شما باید لازم از دل لیتریچر بگی آرگومنتی برسه، بگی مثلا اسدزاده ایکس ایگرگ در مورد ارتباط این دوتا اینو میگه، شما با این جاستیفای میکنید. بعد میگه مثلا من حالا مثلا 2021 اومدم والنریتی تهران رو چیز کردم، فالوینگ اسدزاده آرگومنت مثلا 2015 که این دوتا با هم ارتباط دارن، من میخوام نتیجه با ایشون مقایسه کنم. اگه حتی شما کورلیشن منفی هم دیدی، پس کارت درسته، چون بالاخره یه جاهایی میگیم که این دوتا به هم ارتباط منفی دارن دیگه، بعضی جاها چون اینم داره ساپورت میشه، ولی بعضی جاها هست شما ارتباط مثبت میبینید اونم با ساپورت میشه. ولی خب مفاهیم یکسانی نیستن، کاملا متفاوتی هم نیستن و اینجوری خلاصه کنم براتون که فهم تاب‌آوری یا فهم آسیب پذیری بدون فهم اون یکی امکان پذیر نیست، اصلا امکان پذیر نیست. شما عزیزی خانم بودی، شما نسترن خانم، شما زهر خانم، شما فکر کنم از تیم هستید، درسته؟ اگه سوالی دارید در خدمتتونم، چه اگه نه ما بریم جلو.
ببخشید آقای دکتر، من یه سوال داشتم از حضورتون، خیلی ممنون بابت ارائه خوبتون. ببینید من البته زیادم ربطی نداره به حالا در واقع هم پرزنتیشن، یه سوالی بوده قبلا تو ذهنم بوده، ولی خوشحال میشم اگه شما لطف کنید جواب بدید. یه سوالی که داشتم این بودش که ما میگیم تاب‌آوری میشه بازگشتن به سطح قابلیت خدمت‌دهی قبل از حالا وقوع اون حادثه، درسته؟ بعد مثلا شبکه آبرسانی رو یه چیزی که در موردش میگن که ما میتونیم اون مخزنی که توی وقوع زلزله دچار آسیب شده، موقعی که ما کاملا اون رو بذاریم کنار و بیایم بررسی کنیم، مخزن رو یک محل مناسب‌تر در واقع احداث کنیم، این بالاتر از سطح قابلیت خدمت‌دهی که قبل از وقوع زلزله داشته حتی میرسه. یعنی از زمان پیش از وقوع زلزله عملکرد خیلی بهتری رو داره. بعد میخوام ببینم اینو ما چه شکلی میتونیم تعریف بکنیم، چون فکر میکنم یعنی توی همون قالب تاب‌آوری ما تعریفش میکنیم یا یه مفهوم جداگانه‌ای داره.
نه کاملا درست میفرمایید، سوال خوبی بود. ببینید شما میگید برای من همون یه جزء اینفراستراکچر حساب میشه دیگه، حالا اسمش جزئیاتش کار ندارم، میگه اینفراستراکچر من بتونه همون تاب‌آوری شما کوپینگ کپاسیتی رو دارید میجر میکنید، ولی از دل اون انالیز شما به این نتیجه میرسید که خب الان اینی که بود اینجا شاید خب حسابشو پس داده دیگه، مثلا جاش خوب نبوده، ماتریالش خوب نبوده، دسترسیش خوب نبوده، کمیتش، کیفیتش، حالا هزاران کریتریا خوب نبوده. شما با این یاد داده ها و یادگیری که در حین کار انجام میشه تصمیم میگیرید همون چیزی که فرمودید، مثلا جای خوب جانمایی بشه، مثلا ارتفاعش این بشه اون بشه، کوالش این بشه اون بشه، یا مثلا دسترسیش این بشه اون بشه. این اداپتیشن اتفاق میفته اینجا براش، این میره، یعنی شما همون میگیم که اداپتیشن اتفاق میفته. حالا ترانسفورماتیو اونم میتونه اتفاق بیفته، یعنی میخوام به کانسپت رزیلینس رفت بدم. اون موقعی است که مثلا میگیم ما یه مخزن آبی ساختیم، مثال میزنم، تو 50 سال آینده میتونه کار کنه، نیاز 50 سال آینده، 20 سال آینده، 50 خیلی دیگه ایدئالگرا شد، 20 سال آینده رو میتونه جواب بده. مثلا تو تهران هر زلزله رو میتونه تحمل کنه، لند سابسیدینس نخواهد داشت به هیچ وجه. نمیدونم اصلا همه این کوردینیتورها رو، همه اکتورها که بدون چیز کردیم آوردیم تو کار، کوردینیشنش رو فلان کار انجام داد، ماتریالش این فلانی انجام داد، همه این عناصر دیدید، بعد به یه جایی میرسید که هم جانمایی دارید، هم ماتریال دارید، هم مدیریت داره، هم سازمان داره، هم فایننس داره، همه این میشه ترانسفورمیشن. اگه بتونم اینو استپ بایستم، فقط اگر از دل اونی که الان هست شما میگید یا تا چه حدی این بتونه برگرده، اون میشه کوپینگ، چقدر میتونه برگرده و همون کارکرد داشته باشه. ولی یه ذره، اون یه ذره است، شما مثلا میگی یه ذره ارتفاعش کم کنیم، یه ذره ماتریالش بیشتر کنیم، یه ذره دسترسیش، این خیلی خوبه، از قبلی بهتره، ولی این اداپتیوه. اینکریمنتال اداپتیو میان مدته. یعنی خب اگه اومده باشیم بگی 20 سال یه کاری میکنم یه تهران اصلا این موضوع مثلا مشکلی نداشته باشه، البته همه چی اتفاق میتونه باشه، ولی حداقل اون مفاهیم نظری مبانی رو رعایت کرده باشیم میگیم خب این ترانسفورماتیو توش اتفاق افتاده.
متشکرم.
Just trying to translate shortly, I had two questions. The first one was about the differences between resilience and vulnerability, and mostly the question that Marzia kindly asked was about that do we can also measure vulnerability in the same way and how it relates to resilience, its relationships, and I tried to shortly describe what does it mean, and again a short description on the differences and similarities between two concepts, resilience and vulnerability. And I also highlighted that the term vulnerability also can be operationalized, measured or quantified using composite indicator procedure, and doesn't matter because we learn in composite indicator process or procedure that we need for measuring any concept like sustainability, resilience, vulnerability to start with having a good theoretical foundation, theoretical framework, indicators, data, methodology matters if you would go with equal, unequal, statistic or inductive, deductive, visualization, validation, and etc. This was my first answer to the first question. And then Nastaran asked about the question on measuring and analyzing the resilience of critical infrastructure, I would say, in water management, and if after a measurement the operationalization or the group, the managers, the system decides to do more activity, more investment on the quality, on the institutional management of the system, what happens? Is it in line with coping? Is it in line with adaptive? Or I explain or answer how different kind of interventions on water system management, water reservoirs, Nasran, if I'm not mistaken the name, if different kind of interactions done, how it can be related to different conception of resilience. I tried to link based on the amount and the quality of interactions or interventions on the system. And with which one we can say, okay, we did this one, this capacity, or this, or this. And I'm coming to, okay, another who was from it. Dear Zahra, do you have any question, comment? بفرمایید. هستید؟
آقای دکتر من میتونم این مسئله رو بپرسم؟
بفرمایید.
خیلی ممنونم از شما، استفاده کردم.
مرسی. دومی زهرا خانم بود، الان برمیاد شما. بفرمایید مرزی خانم.
بله، بحث آداپتیو و اینا شد. الان توی بحث آموزش بعد از شرایط پاندمیک ما الان خودمون داریم مثلا جلسات رو به صورت ویرچوال برگزار میکنیم یا اینکه آموزش به صورت مجازی شده. اینا الان شما جزء آداپتیشن در نظر میگیرید یا ترانسفورمیشن؟
دقیقاً سوال خوبیه. این اگر سیستم انالیز ما مثلا ادویکیشن که حالا شما فرمودید، خب الان ما چیکار کردیم؟ ما یه نوع اداپتیشنی کردیم نسبت به پندمیک اومد، ما دیدیم کوپینگ کپاسیتی ها جواب نمیده. کوپینگ چیا بود تو ادویکیشن؟ معلم بره سر کلاس، دانشجو بیاد لپتاپشو باز کنه، دستشو بره بالا. ما یه اداپتیشن انجام دادیم. خب اداپتیشن چی بود؟ ما دیدیم که نمیتونیم چیز کنیم، آوردیم به زوم متکی شدیم، اداپ کانکت متصل شدیم، به اسکایپ متصل شدیم. ولی خب آیا این ترانسفورماتیو توش اتفاق افتاده؟ سواله. ترانسفورماتیو اینه که خب ما رو خیلی به جلوتر بتونه هدایت کنه. خیلی یعنی اون آیا موفق‌تر از اولی بوده که کوپینگ بوده؟ یعنی کوپینگ یعنی به عبارت ساده ما داریم بیزینس از یوزوال، اونی که بوده بیزنس از یوزر یعنی اون که کار میکنه و بهش عادت کردیم، گات یوز کردیم، بهش به سیستم بهش ریلای کردیم، خیلی ازش استفاده کردیم، اون بوده. ما حالا یه اداپتیشن اتفاق افتاده با این ریچال و این اداپت و با این اداپت زوم ما استفاده میکنیم، اسکایپ اینا. ولی سوالی که هست آیا تا چه حدی این با اون اداپتیشن اتفاق افتاد؟ اداپتیشن یعنی اینکه ما یه لرنینگ داریم، بر حسب لرنینگ یه در کوتاه مدت یه جواب به قبلی دادیم، ولی این تا چه حد موفق بوده و خیلی آینده نگران است یا نه، و اینکه ما ضعف‌های قبلی رو دیدیم، آنالیز کردیم، تو این اداپتیشنی که الان جواب داده باشیم اون ترانسفورمیشن اتفاق میفته. الان هنوز نمیدونیم، من حداقل چون تو این کار نیستم نمیتونم بگم، شما شاید بتونید اگه رشته‌تون ادویکیشنه، چه تا چه حدی ما تونستیم ضعف‌های قبلی رو چون اولی بوده میرفتیم حضوری سر کلاس تو این ادرس داده باشیم، آنالیز کرده باشیم، نه اینکه من از زن خودم بگم آره این خوبه بهتره فلانه فلانه. خب اگه اینا رو انجام دادیم و خیلی بلند مدت اون کوردینیشن انجام دادیم، اون لیدرشپ توش، این اینویشن نوولتیز و ترانسپرنت هست یا نیست، حالا به ریزینس میخوام ربطش بدم اینا، ولی نیست ترانسپرنت. من الان نمیدونم شما، مثال میزنم، شما من داشتم توضیح میدم خواب بودی یا بیدار، مثال اینا سوالاتی که هنوز جواب نیست براش. خب امیدوارم تونسته باشم جواب بدم.
بله خیلی ممنون.
Another interesting question, Marzi asked about what is about the new format of connection using, because due to pandemic we forced to use Zoom, Adobe Connect and Skype and something like that. And what about that? Is it in line with adaptation, coping capacity? I tried to answer and link that the already familiar and dominant way was presence format that we got used for several years, decades maybe, going to class in presence format. It was coping capacity and business as usual. We have been using several decades, years, and maybe centuries. But what happened? A sudden shock, it was also shock, the corona was shock, not stress, happened, and we came up with new solution. Let's say Adobe Connect, this one, Zoom virtual connection. It was adaptation. But to what extent is it in line with transformative adoption or incremental adaptation? Because adaptation can be transformative long-term and incremental short-term. My question was that I am not in line with this education because the system focus was education system, but I answered in like that. We included embedded and adaptation pathways toward education system, but to be honest, to what extent is this adaptation is long-term adaptive capacity, transformative capacity, or short-term incremental? It is questionable and challengeable because for me at least, transformative pathways for educational system is like that we totally analyze the previous one, the normal one, and we could answer or address all gaps. We could bridge all gaps by doing this adaptation by virtual. But to what extent we could, this is question. To what extent this is fair, just, coordinated, transparent. I gave an example. I don't know, Katrin, when I was presenting, who was sleeping, who was, totally hearing me, who was like chatting, blah, blah. Okay. There are open questions still in line with the embedding resilience in educational system. I have also, I have seen some papers like this, embedding resilience in educational system. Therefore, resilience is not only for one context, disasters, climate change, sea level. No, it also can be in psychology, in educational system, and etc. Yeah. Then.
Can I ask a question also?
Yes.
So. Do I understand you right that adaptation then is always short-term and transformation has to be a long-term process? Or can that also be that transformation isn't necessarily planned, but just happens also in a way because there's a shock and then the system on itself transformates in this direction? Or always does it has to be planned beforehand?
Yeah, first, well, yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for the good question. I would say the first is yes. The second is not. The second, if I'm not mistaken, if I got your question right, you see in this figure, you know, adaptation is allowed in adaptation because adaptation is used sometimes, most of times, mostly in ecological perspectives interchangeably. But here you see, I use incremental adaptation here in in the blue line, and transformational adaptation. You know, adaptation because in other fields, adaptation is also used separately with resilience. But in our folks, in urban resilience discourses, adaptation is embedded inside of resilience, but which kind of adaptation? Incremental adaptation or transformational adaptation? Incremental, as you see, is medium term, but transformational adaptation is longer term. And I had also an example here, this one. If this person also very famous and very good in resilience policy and resilience discourses, Benin. We are talking about these two, not your question is like that, but ecological resilience and adaptation and transformation, governance transformation. The third one that you say it doesn't necessarily, no, it is also on the contrary, it is mostly not highlighted and acknowledged. Why? Because the argument here is like that cities and systems, let's say cities, urban communities, and their system, this whole system inside of the urban system, including governance and planning, should adapt, should adjust, should learn to new conditions. What is new condition? You know, it's not necessarily mean that, okay, please wait for the next shock, next system. This is reactive. We would be proactive. This is the one big differences. And I also mentioned why resilience as a third item's necessity, its own capacities, potential, that resilience is dynamic and naturally it acknowledges the concept of adaptation and transformation in planning. It means that we should prepare ourselves by learning, by self-organizing, by innovation, by novelties, by coordination, by transparency, orchestration, leadership to long term. Long term means maybe sometimes it depends also. In urban planning, we have long term, sometimes 15 to 20 years, sometimes more than 20 years. But here also our term is more than at least 10 years long, at least more than 10 years. Then it means that our resilience planning, our resilience initiatives should think on future. Maybe it's like that. We experienced COVID-19. We didn't expect. Yesterday, I was seeing a movie, and it was in 2013 or 12. A guy went to doctor, and the doctor had mask. And he was laughing, doctor, in 2013, why you use this one? It isn't in this like sentence, it was in other language. I'm just translating to English. In 2013, it's impossible to have such a easy and fast spread virus. It's like that. I was laughing and saying, wow, it was like nostalgia, you know? It was unbelievable, you know, in 2002 years, 3 years ago, when we see movies and we remember, we say, wow, it was nostalgic. We could go easily to a restaurant, we could see friends. But it means now we should think about that. Maybe what is the next? What is the next? Therefore, I saw a lot of, not a lot of, we also applied one international post-Atlantic transaction call. It was, the name was about the future of cities on post-COVID-19. On post-COVID-19, what should be our cities after COVID-19? And also we use this as a background that our pathways mostly the focus was governance and leadership, should be in transformative way. It means that we should from now prepare ourselves, our system, our attitudes, priorities, values, in everything that are necessary to be included in resilience planning for long term. You know, it needs to have scenarios, long scenarios, not short scenarios or not medium scenarios, because it, again, this transformation, as I also showed this one, that is a bit new one, and when it came, it was started after criticizing coping and adaptive pathways in resilience literature, and scholars decided and argued that coping and adaptive pathways only relying on two narratives, coping and adaptation, generate maladaptation and generates vulnerability. This is from the mostly from the gray literature, from projects, and these are very strong projects, powerful international projects, and this is the line between nexus between science, policy, and practice. We rely, we use this insights to make ourselves our new pathways, how should be in which direction, etc. No, it doesn't mean that we should wait. From now, we should think about like strategic planning in urban planning, strategic planning. And what is next? Any other comments, question? Yeah, I think also it's good to talk about this line that I like, you know, rather than going to groups we discuss here. For example, anything that's related to guiding questions, think about that we are working on the resilience measurement framework on resilience, not making it complex, easy way. We would plan for next 20 years, 10 years resilience. What do you think? What is your experience, insight? What we have learned? What we have seen? What help us more to make a resilient paradigm, resilient strategies, resilient pathways for long term? Long term, I mean that again we are not shocked. Oh, we didn't expect that. That means that we now learned a lot from the past events, shocks, our established priorities, monies, investment, and now we have a good ideas about our attitudes, our shocks, what we had, what we have applied, and we are in the position 2021 that, okay, what we had is not enough. We would think about mostly for long term. We should think about a strategic way. Strategy means like that, you know, having a vision, clear vision, and then designing how we reach to these visions. Yeah, please start. For example, if you are
Dr. Asadzadeh, I have.
Please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Or maybe it's interesting topic because I have this in my mind for a while, even before I participate in your wonderful workshop. You see, for example, someone like me, we're working at the network, which is a national network. So we provide data that is the input data for something like a standard 2800. So these are all like a system that are made from, you know, small or even not small, but I mean inputs that get together, and then when we provide this part, we give it to engineers, all those professors who are working, so they use this data, and at the end they revise the 2800 standard. Then this standard goes to those who are working in construction. So they should apply this standard when they are making the buildings, etc. And then the next step is the supervision of the application. So there should be one group who are responsible to supervise if all these standards are applied or if they ignore it. So my question is, for some place like Tehran, because I know the process, at least for something like some hazard like earthquake, that this is the input, this is the output, and then this output will be input for the next user or policymaker or etc. So these are like a chain that is working. So for somewhere like Tehran, because we are expecting to have a big, large earthquake, and I see it's more than I don't know how many years that we are talking that this risk is real. It's really, I would say, scary, horrifying.
Exactly.
I don't know how to say it.
Mm.
I hope that it won't happen, at least for now. But in real application, because I know that the methodology, like for example, you said you did your, if I remember correctly, your PhD for resilience of Tehran. I'm just talking in terms of a hazard of earthquake. What would be the first step to apply? Like, you know what I'm saying? Not just do the methodological study, just the theory. I'm talking about how to start the real action to make Tehran a bit more resilient. My concern, for example, is one: if earthquake, God forbid, happen, then we know that Tehran has a lot of kind of like tall building and very narrow street. So there is not enough pathway to send the rescue team, which is one of the basic thing in emergency response, as you know. So what is, for a city like Tehran, what is the first step that we start the real application, the real implementation, other than just do the research, the methodological studies, and the outcome you don't see. Like I see some steps has been taken by maybe JICA that was working with the Tehran municipality.
Yes.
Maybe, but I don't see it in reality to see, okay, I see this step is doing, they are doing this to make Tehran more resilient.
Yeah.
So because you're expert in this area, and for someone like me, I'm not really familiar. I'm providing the one of the input that makes, hopefully, inshallah, in future, Tehran or other event, or even like, because our data, no, like our data is also useful for other part of the world because this is earthquake data. But I'm saying we are providing just one input. But maybe in if I go somewhere and I can say something, I can give some guidance to those who are policymakers, maybe in the future if they let me. What's your suggestion, like for real implication, real application, getting out of just theory and go to real application to see that Tehran is getting more resilient? Tehran is an example, but it's a really perfect example, you know, especially for earthquake hazard, or even for flood, whatever, name it. We have all the natural hazards. so I appreciate if you give me an insight that, what is the first real step to start the application, not just do the study and because there are tons of study and then they don't apply it. So what's the good thing out of it for Tehran or for cities, something like Tehran? If you provide me with some real application, real step that we start the action, it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the great question. Another great question. I remember 2016, because I had the same question that time. I was finalizing my PhD. I was in a conference in Switzerland, in Davos. And a lot of stakeholders, a lot of scientists. It was the biggest that I have participated up until now. And I met Susan Cutter, and whose theoretical foundation I applied for my PhD, and I analyzed as I presented for Tehran. It was my own question. Okay, because first, what I presented in first section for Tehran, to be honest, in this level was academic work, you know. For me, mostly added value was methodological part, because it was a PhD work, you know. Nobody expects you to, for example, policy recommendation, practice recommendation from the PhD dissertation, and the target is others different, but you're totally right, because what should be practice? What is the first priority for action? And I asked this question, and I got a very good answer, I would say, and it depends. And we don't have a single solution, one fit to each context answer for that, but it depends. To what? To what we did, to what we included, investigated in our resilience planning. I'm not talking about what I have done, because it was a bit, again, it was an academic one, but I'm talking about the increase project that we have now from 21 to 25. And if we are talking, just following your question, what should be, not could be, should be the outcome of this, because it is intended to increase the integrated resilience for Tehran, not only one. Integrated disaster risk management means including all aspects. But again, integrated disaster risk reduction and resilience is a very broad concept. I would come in a line that, again, maybe is tangible for us, both of us, and for this one, what we have done in urban planning, maybe. Because we talk mostly on earthquake hazard, and we know the importance of buildings, you know, and you had a great examples of having accessibility problem at the moment, low quality. I also presented some statistic of how could be unfortunately happen in Tehran if an earthquake like Haiti shakes the city, you know, terrible. Hopefully doesn't occur, but it is the condition. But what should be resilience in this area do, and what should be the action plan of that? It depends, Dr. Tani, what we are going to analyze again. If we are going again to analyze statistical, I think it doesn't work out. I think the best idea for us having an action plan is like we should challenge our dominant governance and planning system. We should challenge why we are in this condition, why where we have been and where we are now. But again, some other questions, and I mentioned some existing problem in resilience planning. I also give you some examples of what we have in Tehran now. You know, definitely you know TDMMO, Tehran Disaster Management Organization, dependent to Municipality of Tehran. They do a lot of things, and they are one of our partners, key partners. They are mostly from the institutional activities, and also responsible for not only providing, also they preparing and sometimes implement some activities for early warning system. They also had some for neighborhood or sub-districts disaster management basis center, something like that. I mean, they are also in implementation section. But if we are planning, making urban planning resilience, and we have short-term agenda, again, after 10 years, after 20 years, we are in the same step that we are now. I think most importantly, for having a good practice, definitely we need to back one step or two steps before. The first is the process. Because what we had now in Tehran, we see this kind of planning processes are mostly exclusive. You know, it's exclusive. Who prepared the master plan for Tehran? How many companies have been? I remember at that time in 85, at the moment, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 16 years ago, maximum 10 companies, Mansin Moshaver, were included in this preparation. Maximum maybe municipality with one attitude, policy attitudes, or insider, etc. Even in our, I was the master student in University of Tehran, College of Fine Arts, Urban and Regional Planning. I remember which professor presented this master plan to us. To be honest, I asked some question. I realized, because I don't claim that I was very clever. No, I had a question, but I didn't get my answer because I realized that also he is not. Because, and you know, we here in Iran, we call fine arts urbanization faculty as the mother, blah, blah, it's the center of urban planning. But what happens? Then transparency of the resilience and the process. Then what kind of policies realize interaction of this process in structures again? But to what extent our master plans, detailed plans provide resilient pathways for us? But if we can challenge them by using transformative criteria, because yeah, we are now is late, but at least we can start, you know, again, to having a starting point. Because to be honest, for Tehran, there is no integrative disaster risk resilience and management. I mean integrated is a project that includes as much as relevant actors possible, not only, for example, Municipality of Tehran, TDMO, University of Tehran, Shahid Beheshti, etc. All, I mean, I don't mean all citizens, but as much as possible actors, elites, I don't know, NGOs, and etc. Another way to make, because in this, I gave also an example to, I think, for Dr. Samani, how if we have participatory method way to discuss, to plan, to investigate on resilience, also we can validate each other, you know. When we plan, we prepare our resilient master plans, urban planning, resilience strategy, on one room desktop deductive way, nobody hears, nobody sees, and this is the way we are. Then Tehran physical is like that. Again, sectoral planning comes for renovation, revitalization, again, short-term and maybe sectoral attitudes. I don't know to what extent, again, I hear from different kind of municipalities, mayors, they come, they provide some different kinds, even from the Ministry of Housing, from Dr. Akhundi, then Dr. Islami came and doesn't accept his idea on, for example, Masjan Mehr housing policy. Sectoral, I don't say, I'm not political man, sectoral attitudes, not coordination, not cooperation, short-term mostly short-term, at most medium-term attitudes on our strategies. This is the way. But if without having a long-term strategies, policies, here we assume that we are talking about the resilient policy, we cannot have a good practice. If we have a good policy, resilient guideline, policy and recommendation for resilience policy and practice, and if it is transparent and inclusive, then we can, and if again we can make innovative. But an example for innovation means like this 2800, it is also is a good one, adoptive one. I think, because you mentioned, I was writing your thing, it should be revision in application, supervision, monitoring, controlling. If all processes happen for this building code as a good adaptive way, and maybe one with monitoring, evaluation of its impact during last 10 years, 20 years, maybe some new adits, new insight, new modification became of one good example of transformative action in Tehran. For example, we analyze its impacts not only on quality, maybe on social side effects. For example, what the effects of these codes, not only in quality, but also to what extent it provided maladaptive pathways, or I don't remember. Maybe I have. I read a Persian paper on the side effects of this building code to 2800 on vulnerability, for the vulnerability, not physical vulnerability, but social vulnerability in Tehran. These are, because the question is a bit, to be honest, a hard question, but for a starting point, I think the starting point for resilience practice is only possible when we have a good theory of what should to do. It's not possible. It is like black box. We say, okay, the good practice is making high quality buildings, or investing on metro, or making our highways. What happened in Sad highway and multi-story highways, maladaptation. Maladaptation. Or also we have invested in making the city modern in 40 years ago, I would say, in the mayor, who was the mayor? Karbasi. Then in the time of Ahmadinejad, when he was a mayor, most of this highway had a turnway, Again, by one decision, one sectoral decision, we made our adaptive way, because it was adaptive way, to make it long-term transportation. He made long-term transportation, turned it to a sectoral, to a local thing, by making a highway changing it to function as same as local street has. These are sectoral intervention without having a final or clear or long-term coherent, I would say, sound, coordinated action or attitudes on resilience. At the moment, if you ask me what is the good practice for building resilience in Tehran, I would say I'm urban planning. I don't want to start with the physical things. I think the best strategy for now is having a coordination and leadership. This is, I think, we definitely missing in Tehran. Also, I had an example also in North Rhine-Westphalia. When we analyzed this metropolitan North Rhine-Westphalia, we saw, because we had 4 dimensions for transformative resilience, 16 indicators. Also in the 1 dimension, the score of this metropolitan was low. Even in developed countries, the 4 developed countries in the world, Germany, missing, is still missing. What is, I think I would say, the first priority for action, because action not only means physical action, for me is also a starting point, is the creating integrated management system that plays a leadership, coordination, orchestration role for resilience planning, policy, action, monitoring, evaluation, etc. My idea, at least.
Thank you, Dr. Asadzadeh. It was
You're
a
welcome.
very good explanation. Another point that I think now, so for example, if we want to give an idea when they can, like where they can start to do this leadership, I mean, like for example, for somewhere like Germany, is there a specific pattern? For example, if it's ministry who's responsible, because you know that there is a new law, I think it's 2 years ago, if I remember, or 2 or 3 years ago, that the new law for disaster risk reduction was adopted by the parliament. I don't know if you're, for sure you are aware of that.
Yes.
And then they kind of distribute the duties between different ministry, university, because university is under Ministry of Education, and then the TDMO included, but not just the responsible one, because it goes to the higher level, the disaster management, not just for Tehran, the original department for disaster management. So we have now the law, and BHRC has lots of responsibility that mentioned in the law. So by the law, we are responsible to do that. But for this leadership, I think, as you mentioned, it's correct. Still, we have the problem. So if we want to guide this this new action that they just distributed and they put it as law, but how to apply it, how to put it in practice. Again, it should be like ministry who is the doing the leadership. Is it the municipality for each city? For somewhere like Germany that you are now familiar more with their system. Who is the responsible sector to provide this leadership and distribute all those guidance to other sectors? I'm just curious, like for other countries, like developed countries, which sector is doing this leadership? It would be great if to know. Maybe we can again adopt, because most of the regulations we have, for sure we make them more localized, but we adopt them and then we localize them. So maybe it gives us good idea and we can, you know, jump few steps because we have a good example, and then we save time because we already lost a lot of time. So yeah, for somewhere like Germany that we are familiar, who is responsible for the leadership? That we can say, at least give the suggestion that maybe, okay, you put this, I don't know, organization or a committee or whatever as the leader for this, and then they decide, and then they can start the actions, as you said. Again, thank you for your explanation.
Thank you very much again for the great question, Dr. Asari. I would say something here. The first is, you mentioned about the new law and the new regulation for disaster risk management passed by Parliament 2 years ago. Again, in Iran, and I don't know, I'm Iranian, you know, I'm here, but I don't know what happens in most of other countries. But in Iran, also, I remember for this paper that we analyzed the resilience of metropolitan regions, two regions, Tehran and Rhine Rule. The law for having a management organization for in the metropolitan region for Tehran refers to at least 30 years ago. If I'm not mistaken, 1985 or something like 32, more than 2 decades. But what happened now after 25 years is nothing. Nothing happened in Tehran, and is again one of the big limitations, one of the main important reason for failing big planning strategies in Tehran metropolitan is absence of this coordination or coordinating team coordination and management that makes coordination. If I step by step. The second was who should take this responsibility, and for at least for Germany, I mentioned for resilience because we analyze planning system, governance and planning, and to be honest, when we analyze the system in Germany by some kind of criteria that I mentioned, we didn't see it was poor. Therefore, when it was poor, nothing happened in at least in this metropolitan, at least for governance and planning, and at least what we have seen in when we did our work was like the cooperation. Great, because what is different in Germany and Iran, at least in terms of planning and governance, is the centralization here and the format of the model of planning. Because I'm talking about this because these are my activities. Despite of resilience, I'm a planner, and here the process, the structure is decentralized, and local government, community, local municipalities have a lot of role on planning systems, but the planning roles, decisions are made in the combination of four levels. In Iran, we have 3 levels, but also here we see some kind of very coordinated cooperation. Cooperation because what happened maybe in our studies, the result is because of the scale. Scale is a metropolitan area, not cities, you know. Metropolitans are here. In this metropolitan, we had at least 10 big cities. In Germany, big cities means more than 100,000 people. At least in this metropolitan area, we have Bonn, Düsseldorf, Köln, Duisburg, Düsseldorf, Essen, Dortmund, and etc. Big cities, and most of them had more than 300 at least. And Cologne is more than 1 million. And coordination in the level of metropolitan region was lacking, but I am not sure about coordination in the level of cities, city level. It was not studied by our work, and to be honest, also what I did literature was about that, but coordination in the city level definitely is different one. It's different, but that I'm sorry that I can't address because I studied only metropolitan area and this my information, if I don't talk Falei and if I should be give you right information like that, I don't know who takes this responsibility at city level. I know because what I teach in urban planning for master students in our group is like that. Is an organization in city, in municipality. The municipalities in Germany, municipalities have a lot of roles and power and also forces. One group is responsible for this kind of coordination in city level for translating planning on the ground level. At city level, we have this, but we analyzed for resilience, at least for the metropolitan region. But if we discuss, and most of the time this adaptation doesn't work, you know, I am not a fan of this adaptation. Adaptation, not this adaptation, we are talking adapting means adjusting, copy paste. I mean, this adapting is not good idea because what happened in our master plans also is mostly is copying, you know, we copied mix of US and French planning system, and it is the way our cities work. And most of the time, I also mentioned that in Iran, if you say I'm urban planner, I'm Shahsaz, most of people say you did this, this is the our condition, your work, and blah blah blah. And who should be as a coordinator or coordinating organization? I think is a good question. Mostly, if I back to the literature supporting this idea, is like that: whose forces, sources, and powers are you know, are more and acceptable, you know, for others. You know, I want to give example for Corona management, COVID-19 management in Iran. I think at the beginning of this management process, the leadership, this coordination was Ministry of Health, if I'm not mistaken. But I read a lot of discussion that the decisions are not translated or not accepted by others, for example, by military or militaries section and institutions. And then after, I don't know how many months, the centers, the organization level changed to Ministry of Interior, وزارت کشور, that has more money, power, you know, standard, a lot of things. This is one, I think, example. And here, this orchestration, this leadership should not only in a democratic way, also should have some kind of not. I'm not talking about a dictatoring or something like that. Mostly, also the acceptance also should be, you know, if this coordination happened, if Ministry of, for example, Interior got coordinated 50 divergent discourses and got an acceptance and a consensus-based strategy, others should follow. Then the ministry should have some kind of, you know, authority, acceptance, or I would say, you know, some kind of how can I explain that? That every others actors, relevant actors, that say, okay, we accept your the result that you generated. You coordinate, we trust you, we believe in you, and we follow you. This, I think, one idea came in my learning that we had from the management of COVID-19 is a good example. Who should take this responsibility? But again, a lot of other concerns should be considered and should be counted for this coordination. Power and acceptance is one aspect. Another aspect is, for example, background and knowledge, you know, techniques, other important things. But at the moment, I have no answer. Who should take this responsibility in Tehran? Maybe it's a question for our 4-year project, and at the end, maybe we get it, because this is one question also for the project. Who should be the center point for disaster risk reduction and management in Tehran? At the moment, I see this is as a formal one from Ministry of Interior. What is the emergency center, crisis مدیریت بحران, crisis management center in Ministry of Interior, and another is for city level is TMO for municipality level. But TDO is responsible for Tehran, entire Tehran, but in entire country, I think the center located in the Ministry of Interior is responsible. I hope, yeah, good question, but my answer is like
thank
that.
you. It's wonderful, your explanation. Thank you so much. Because, as you mentioned, I know TDMO is working on, for example, one of the project, earthquake early warning system. So it's ongoing project for a few years, and then they stopped for I don't know how many years, and they started again. And I'm one of the member who is collaborating for that, and I would say it's still in the process of developing the system. I mean, that they can apply, because you know, the earthquake, the warning system is kind of sophisticated. But even if hopefully, inshallah, it is implemented, again we have problem because we don't have enough public awareness about how to react to these type of system. And then I saw the law, because as I mentioned, BHRC is responsible for many sectors, many parts in the new law. And my department, ISMN, is we are responsible for the shape map, that is kind of basic input, basic necessary input for the rapid response. So again, I see we provided, I mean, not we, but government provided some funding for the devices that we need, and we are in the process of implementation. We are really behind the timing. I mean, we do our best, but because of the sanction, I don't know, Iran has many problems, and you know better than me. But even if we complement the implementation, then there should be more infrastructure for this type of system to be implemented. And again, okay, we provide the shape map. Then who is responsible to apply them? And I still see, as a member in, maybe my information is not enough. It's another problem, because there should be public awareness, and they should start. I mean, we should start from those who has the role. For example, if I am a person working in the center and we have the role, so I should be aware of the steps that I should take. You know what I'm saying? And still, I don't see this type of actions. They provide the law, they provide some facilities, but it's not completed. And then again, okay, we have the output from, for example, earthquake warning, early warning. Okay, we have the output from rapid, the shake map to give this shake map to provide better rapid response. But then what? So there is one missing part here again, and at least I didn't see who is the coordinator, as you said, and who is going to connect all this chain together to have the better risk management, which is one part of having better resilience, as you explained in your presentation. That's why I'm asking, because sometimes when I go to the meeting, I'm just lost, like, to see, okay, what's the next step? Who is the one that we should contact? Who is the one responsible for giving the education to people? Because if people do not know how to react, for example, a few years ago, we felt earthquake in Tehran. I don't know if you were here or if you were in Germany, but in Tehran, we felt it, the earthquake that happened in Karaj, basically. It was not even in Tehran, but people felt, and Dr. Asadzadeh.
Exactly.
From my home to the center that I'm working is like 5 minutes. I'm pretty close to the center. And that night I was going to the center because we had to connect to the instrument that we have to download the data, the earthquake data, and see what happened, what is the highest acceleration that we experience, you know, those type of information. That 5 minute way took me 45 minutes because people were all over the highway and streets. And this is one example that I'm saying. So in case, God forbidden, I hope that it won't happen,
Yes.
at least for now, but if earthquake happen, the highway is locked. That's the thing that I saw myself with my eyes. So how
Yes.
they want to send the emergency response? If people are so anxious and they react like that, so what is the you know what I'm saying, like what would be the situation in that time? And I didn't see
Yes.
real
Yes.
education. Some maneuver in schools, but other than that I didn't see. So if we have the real case, it would be really a big disaster because there is no way that people, like the emergency response can reach those parts that is you know, that they need the most emergency response and emergency help.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you. It gives me some idea. But still, I am sorry to say, but for me, maybe my knowledge is not enough. Maybe I'm not that involved. But still, I don't see
No.
though the one who is responsible to make the connection between these chain. You know what I'm saying? Maybe one part, everyone is working like, yeah, we
Right.
work
Yeah, no,
for
it's very
asking for this type of instrument that can provide real-time data. So again, one part that is really important for risk management. So I remember, God bless him, Mohandes Moinfar. If you remember, he was the first Ministry of Oil in Dr. Bazargon. Yeah,
yes.
you
Yeah.
remember. So
Fine.
he is the father. Yeah, he was the guy.
Governance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like a
Cabinet.
founder of IS7. He wrote a lot of red letters and he tried a lot that I always say, God bless him. He made this network as it is now and asked for new instrumentation. So we did our part to ask for what we know we need. But after that, again, we need more infrastructure and then we need someone to come and connect us to the application of this system. And at least for now, I
Yes.
don't see it.
Yeah.
So again, thank you. It was really interesting. I hope maybe we can have more collaboration and you give us really good hints. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
think this is
Definitely.
necessary because I was in a meeting and I cannot recall the name of that professor. He was working, I think, in Philipps-Universität. But he said they have really good research on urban planning, for the master planning, for the city planning, etc. And then he said all of the research just goes to the library. No one used this. And I was like, you know, this is the problem that we have now because there are lots of studies, lots of experts, lots of outcome, but they don't go to the real practice. So yeah, I would
Yes. To
love
the
to maybe
practice.
connect you with those who are more responsible, at least in BHRC, for providing those regulations to consider, you know, what you said is necessary. Maybe, inshallah, we can do at least one small step, but it's helpful, hopefully, for Tehran, for Iran, and yeah, I hope that we can do something. It's my intention. So hopefully we continue this collaboration. And thank you again for your explanation. Yeah. I
Thank
stop
you.
and maybe
Thank
other
you
people
for
have
great
questions, so I stop
explanation.
here. But these questions were related also to the exercise that you gave for the what is the scope, what is the dynamic interactions,
Exactly.
all these questions that you provided. I think lots of them are covered here with this conversation, because you go from the study hopefully to practice, and we can cover these parts here.
Exactly.
So I stop here, and I give the floor to other participants. Maybe they have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sagi, for very great and comprehensive argument. And really, I enjoyed how you link the theory and the gap between theory and practice. This is one of the big challenges, not only in the others, also in resilience. And the examples that you gave also, we had, I have also seen, and we had also one meeting in Tehran Research Planning Center, the Tehran Research Planning Center related to Municipality of Tehran, مرکز مطالعات و برنامه‌ریزی شهر تهران. We have been there for this project 3 years ago, 2018. And because they are responsible, one of my friend, Professor Basirat, that time was the chair of the group. Now he is now in University of Tehran, Maysam Basirat. And they hosted us, and the example, they are responsible for preparing Tehran master and details plan, detail and master plan. And the idea was like that, again, something like that. They know about resilience. They heard about that, how it can make some new insights, added value on planning. But again, the sectoral things, the sectoral attitudes, the lack of coordination, this linkage between different sectors and balancing leadership. We had a lot of discussion. I already mentioned we had for this proposal, the previous one that came up to increase 6 workshops in Iran and Germany, 4 in Canada and Tehran. And a lot of one-off teams, because we have good studies in Iran, in sectoral teams for infrastructure, for planning. What is not happened is like the connection of first their relationship to each other, and how they this kind of works are translated to the practice in an integrated way. Translated to the practice in an integrated way, not in sectoral way. For example, I do something next, we have seen our streets 1,000 times that today municipality came to do, next time power line, next is from the CV8 and etc. This kind of uncoordinated activities is one of, not only for residents, also for other business as usual planning practices in Iran. But hopefully one target that also I have written here and also in our parties, who takes leadership, who should take leadership for resilience, not only preparation of resilience, also for practice. This is one I hope we find the answer after or maybe during the project. And you have my email. I think also you know Professor Fekete, Alexander Fekete also. He's also part of the Increase project. We will definitely be in Iran next May, اوایل خرداد, and most of you who are interested, maybe you have our connection and we can be in contact, and you are welcome to join us. We will hopefully, at the moment, we are planning for a presence meeting in end of May and 1st of June for 5 days in Tehran, for talking about meeting each other, discussing what is the gap, what is the solution, something like that, and hopefully to see you and talk more, maybe in presence or maybe in line with the discussion that we had today. And Catherine, I heard maybe you had a question 2 times. Sorry, I interrupted you. Do you have a question?
Not really a question, but I thought it's really interesting because I have read an article on the topic of like bottom-up resilience, community resilience, and they also had a problem with so streets that were blocked. Streets that were blocked in the emergency case, and it was an earthquake in Chile in 2010, and how they then I'm not sure if that's called adaptation, but they changed the way they made the plans. So they saw that they had signs for like the emergency roads, but in case of emergency, all of the vehicles were on this road because that was the way they said they should go. But then in the end, that was the slower way to get out, and so they, I think they did something like community mapping. So which ways the people normally would go without the signs, and so they made different signs for different communities, so they could spread the people to get out of like the coastal area where maybe the tsunami would come in. So I thought maybe I'd share that. I found that really interesting, and yeah.
Thank you, Katrin. I think definitely is a good example, and I have read a lot of good example from China, because due to the number of population, they did a lot of adaptation. This is also adaptation and adaptation activities, because if you, again, I would say we have two kind of adaptation. Please remember that short-term adaptation, incremental, it's still better than nothing have. And the second, the best one is transformative long-term adaptation. But what they do, what they did is, even if we call it short-term, incremental adaptation is also is good one, because that shows the first important. That shows they could realize that the system, they established the dominant system, the still using system processes, methods, etc., could not work well. And an example, they decided to change the methodology, the way. This is an adaptation. Again, to what extent that could be a best pathways for the future depends on the evaluation of this pathways, because it's a pathways, a methodology, strategy, but should be evaluated. What kind of because without having an evaluation, it is like a black box, and it's not say, okay, we did this one, this is the best one. No, every one good strategy for this is like that. We make a good strategy, good pathways in integrated way, in inclusive way, participatory way, future-oriented way. But even if we could not evaluate the impact, the side effect, then it is not like so very sound and comprehensive. It's a claim again. But if you compare two methodology, two pathways, one has not been validated or tested or evaluated, one evaluated, then definitely we go to the second one, that because we know we could evaluate it. Therefore, it was a good example, and some kind of this adaptive, definitely one big challenge in resilience literature also. I am now drafting a paper on, the title is like estranging, the mapping the current trends and the, what is the exact name? I have a lot of, I have the exact name here. Please, the exact name of the paper. Yeah, mapping the narratives of urban transformative resilience. And it is ongoing paper I am doing with a professor in Japan, in Iran, and also in Germany. And we are doing knowledge structure, attitudes, what happened in literature when the transformative came on the agenda, why, where mostly, who contributed more, with which background, what kind of aspect they highlighted, some kind of mapping. It's not systematic literature review, is most often it's a current content analysis. But up until now, we have seen like that. There is a lot of works on transformative resilience practice. Theory, we have good examples in theory, in literature. We see what does it mean, definition, fundamental aspects. Theory is enough. Definitions, keywords, enough, but practice. Rather, we have for copying capacity a lot of examples, empirical evidence. We have, as Professor Samani mentioned, actual resilience. But for this one, transformative, for adaptive also, we have a lot of good examples from New York cities, from Netherlands cities. They do some sea level walls and some, these are adaptation activities, And Netherlands is I would say Netherlands is a good example of adaptive. They also call, sometimes depends how you analyze or they analyze their works. Sometimes they claim or analyze their work as transformative adaptation, and sometimes I would say incremental adaptation. It depends how you see or which background and etc. But yeah, the lack is now practice of transformative resilience and practice of transformative resilience, because also, as I mentioned already, transformative resilience is also a bit new one. After 2010, step by step came on the resilience literature, and now it's mostly claimed. Please do transformation. And from others, dear Marzi, Nasser, and Zahra, if you have any other feedback question in Persian also, welcome, much welcome. Philip.
Yes.
You had a question. Now it's time.
That's too late now.
In the absence of a lot of questions, I prefer. No. I know definitely you recorded. Please go ahead. You should. Democratic, I am taking about democracy, but it is also the way. I am thinking democratic, but the practice is not democratic. Yeah. Today I think this is the first time you had some kind of workshop. Mostly people go to the groups, discuss, but this is an innovation occurred here. It's a transformative way. We had today, and we had an open discussion, not without group, but because a lot of people here.
Even one group. Yeah, I think even one group is easier to manage. For the previous workshop, it was 2 groups, but 2 very small groups, and then again, we joined together for the final discussion. So yeah, it was interesting. I think I enjoyed it myself. Anyway, I hope other participants enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I have another request. I know that they provide this just like a kind reminder. So your slides, your presentation today was very interesting too. So for us, we are going to get the link again to get the presentation. Maybe Philip can give us an idea. I just want to make sure that everyone can have access, because I know how much time and effort you put for this presentation. So let's make most of it, and everyone can have access. Maybe they can later read it again and use. NaDiMa team, thank you.
You're welcome.
It was so fast. I was just asking, and then it's there. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think everyone can enjoy the presentation again, maybe because it was really full of information, so maybe later they can, go back to it and
Thank you.
use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for kind and nice words, Dr. Sagi. And by the way, if any of you have in the future days, not years, but in coming near, close or near future, have any questions, feedback, and wanted, again, you have my emails, and I'm always available to, when you reach out by email, having a question on resilience, on the materials, I am happy to answer you. And really, please go ahead with any question, feedback, and etc. on topic. If you are interested to do or if you are working on topics. Yesterday, Wahid, for example, 2 days ago, Wahid wrote me that he is going to finish a PhD on this topic, and definitely I will have a call with him as well to discuss on his experience, background, knowledge, and etc. And I am enjoying, like, having such kind of discussion on resilience, activities. What this is also like a measurement of resilience. Any discussion, any insights generate new kind of insights on the topic. Maybe methodology, maybe one indicator, maybe one context. Nobody knows what. This is. I mean, you are welcome to write me to ask any question and etc. While Zahra kindly provides the link, friends, colleagues, if you have any other question, again, please go ahead. With Persian, English, Turkish also, I'm here.
I would have another question. There's a you listed here drivers and enhancers of resilience. What enhances resilience? And I was wondering if there is quantifiable data on this topic, or can we say, because there are so many different variables that can enhance resilience as I have seen it. So do we know what kind of driver are the best ones where politics should have more, maybe take more of the funds to? I don't know. I was wondering if there's something like that.
Yeah, thank you, Katrin. Good question. Drivers and enhancer of resilience. It depends to work by work, case by case, and context by context. If it is academic work, is a project, is something like that. If it's, for example, an academic work, maybe it is interesting for you. You work on making, like the case, assume that the case is like that, measurement framework for assessing the resilience of urban governance and planning, right? And definitely we can find, for example, I provided the second 2 or 3 examples. One was about the cities, De Souza, and they provided two people, 3 enhancers: planning, designing, and managing. These are, they decided as a dimensions or factors that contribute to resilience, enhance resilience. Then, if you agree, and if you are, for example, your supervisor, in your case, supervisors or supervisor agree with that, then definitely you can also make some indicators for translation of this to the analysis. For example, you say, from the literature, maybe you do some expert arguments, expert questionnaires. Maybe you do literature and you combine them and you come to result that, for example, for planning, let's say legal aspect, functional aspect, I don't know, spatial aspect, temporal aspects can be a driving forces for enhancing resilience at the city level. Okay, if you are talking about the functional aspect as a enhancing driver, then you need to go also extract relevant aspects, dimension, indicators from literature, or finding this from literature and complementing or validating by some stakeholders or maybe some experts. For example, you go to find this from, you say, I got this, I decided to make functional aspect as a driving for resilience of urban planning. I went to literature, I found 10 indicators, and you come to me and says, please help me, these 10 indicators work for Tehran, I'm expert from Tehran. I say, yes, 8 of them too. Then you can validate also this. So these are the methodology part of things. Also works for the project levels, Then I would say this not should be exclusive, should be inclusive as much as possible, and supported from the literature, for me, a good argument, good project, good study is that have a good context. Context is like that you go to literature first to analyze what does resilience in terms of, in the context of planning mean, the first. Then you go to literature thousands and you get some idea from literature, what does it mean? Then second step in the contextualization is like that you organize or you have some online, I don't know, you prepare some question and share this item that you found from the literature to validate with experts. The second step, you complement this. The third also is like that. You can also make some past experience, what the root cause analysis. For example, you say, I am trying to measure or analyze the resilience of urban planning. I know resilience and I know elements of urban planning is not so difficult. And resilience is a positive thing, you know, resilience is a system capacity to blah, blah, blah. And you can go to maybe last 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and understand what happened in last 20 years. For example, the context is migration. When German planning, city of Bonn, city of Cologne, city of Essen, what they're planning could react to, for example, migration in 1990s happened in 2014 happened. What kind of strategies were successful, which was not successful, you know? Another root cause analysis, you know, this is a exposed, if I'm not exposed analysis, you go to previous experiences and look what happened, because you know what is the system. Systems, urban planning, strategies, policies, what happened. You go, for example, 2016, 14, 17, and you looked to what extent city of Bonn provided, for example, housing, I don't know, education, I don't know, blah, blah, for migrants people, if it is good or not. These also can be, for example, you find some idea, some dimension that you can also link to your findings, and you say, these also driving factors can be as a driving factors for analyzing resilience of urban planning in case of Germany, in case of Tehran and blah, blah, you know, different kind of, here I tried also to, from the methodological part, you can do this one, but again, sometimes you may have indicators, it was also your question, but sometimes you don't find. It's totally fine. It happens. It is a case for this increased project in Tehran. We also have a scenario. We have also scenario that what happens if Iranian partners, because we also have 10 or 11 Iranian partners, and they mostly they claim that we have good data. Please come together. We work together. We publish. Blah blah blah. But what happens if we don't have access to data? We should have also scenario that if, for example, I have 10 indicators, assume, for analyzing, and there is no data, secondary data, because mostly data we are saying the data, for example, sensors, for example, online available, remote sensible. What happens if don't available, we cannot find open access data? Another one is going to find some experts as a primary data, expert ideas. Definitely some ideas, some methodology can be applied to go in this direction. You say, you argue, I couldn't find trustable data. I couldn't find scalable data. I couldn't find updated data. Then I tried change my methodology. I went to primary data. I find 5, 10, depends on the scope, depends agreement with you and supervisors, or maybe in the project it's going to be with funders. How many actors, experts are acceptable, and you go proceed. Definitely, but it's possible. Depends what is the target of resilience. Is it absorptive, adaptive, or transformative, and what kind of indicators you define, and what is the system capturing?
Yeah, thank you very much.
This is answer for your question.